All right, we are on live. Okay, this may not be the best subject to discuss, but you see what's on the monitor behind me, and we will be talking about this as folks filter in. What are we talking about? Is it possible to create a Karen? Now, what is a Karen? That's the question we're going to be asking. What is a Karen? You've heard about it in the news. I should have had my definition up here, but um, you typically hear it being referred to by African Americans, liberals. Certainly, a lot of black folks are talking about white women calling the police on them when they're doing nothing but everyday activities. But is it possible that African Americans could actually be doing something to actually create a Karen? So, Karen is a pejorative term for a white woman perceived as entitled or demanding beyond the scope of what is normal. That's not quite the definition in its entirety that I may have thought in the beginning. But the reason we're talking about this is for one simple reason. This gentleman here, I believe his name is Cleotha. Now, Cleotha, odd name. I didn't get the last name, but this gentleman here, if you can see him on my monitor somewhat, my computer is not acting right this evening, but this gentleman here has a unique name. What the hell is his name? Cleotha, down in Memphis, Tennessee. This is a national news story. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about it. Cleotha Abston. Cleotha Abston. Talk about a hell of a name. This gentleman here has been charged with the brutal kidnapping and Elisa, I believe her name was Elisa Fletcher. Now she is a Caucasian woman. This is down in Memphis, Tennessee. My slides should have been in better shape than they are right now. But they're on the monitor behind me. She was very pale, so you might have a hard time seeing her because the image reflects light pretty damn well, but she was a very pale woman. Elisa Fletcher. Now, she was kidnapped, grabbed off the street while jogging. Exactly what a lot of Karens fear. When you see women cross the street when an African American is approaching them, they're jogging, they notice an African American is behind them, and they're constantly looking back. Oftentimes when an African American is walking down the street and the Karen calls the police or something like that, and the black person is like, well, I wasn't doing anything wrong. This gentleman here, Cleotha, if I can pronounce his name, I'm assuming that's his name. Yeah, it is an overexposed picture. I see CZ4200 said it's overexposed. Yeah, her face is really bright. But this gentleman here, or this piece of scum, gentleman is way too kind of a word, but this individual here has been charged with literally yanking her off the street, and today he was charged with also murdering her. I believe her remains were found yesterday, and that they have been able to tie it allegedly it's been tied to him. Now, I understand this is not going to be popular. I understand a lot of folks are going to have a problem with your humble correspondent talking about a story like this, but I've made it clear since I began this broadcast that I will always try to maintain an unbiased opinion, whether we're talking about politics, daily news, or just the national agenda. And this time we're going to be talking about Karens. So that's the question I'm asking today. Is it possible for African Americans to create a Karen? If you have concerns, fears, things of that nature in regards to African Americans and you are not a minority, I invite you into the box. We can talk about that in a sensible, logical way. I do not censor, ban, or block folks for their comments. I want to hear honest opinions. Is this something that you fear? Whether you're African, whether you're a male or a female, there are a lot of folks. I've talked to them on my programs, and they suggest that African Americans are violent. I want to talk to folks about this. And if you are a minority and you think it's wrong to even bring this subject up, I invite you in the box as well. It's not a very popular topic. Normally we're talking about Trump, we're talking about Biden, we're talking about politics. This is a current event. I just want to see what the folks have to say about it. Looking in the comments here, I think they're white vote Democrat. Okay, fair enough. I see somebody in the comments says Trump is a traitor. I don't know what that has to do with this gentleman. I get it, folks. You prefer talking about politics. I get it. I just wanted to hear the opinion from the folks on this. And by the way, tap the screen, get your boy likes up. Now, I'm going to tell you this, despite the fact that we're not exactly talking about politics, this is a MAGA-friendly audience. So if you do have these concerns, you're free to come in the box. You will not be judged based on your statements, at least not by your humble correspondent, not by yours truly. But I want to know if folks out there have similar fears that we often tie into Karens. And if so, maybe it is actually based on something that has happened in your life. I want to know about that. Looking in the comments, and I do see Next Level Student says this is a boring topic. It's all over the news. This story made national news. And that is why I'm bringing it to you as a potential Karen creator. Because this is something, long before the right wing, Republicans, my MAGA folks, long before you were complaining that the media was not giving you a fair analysis, or we're not viewing you fairly, there was another group of people that often complained that the media was unfair to them too. Black people. We often complained that the media portrayed us in the worst of ways, put the worst of us on television. Folks who could barely even speak the language, dressed like slum. So we also complained that the media did not treat us right. And here we are today. This is all over the media. And I'm wondering what you guys would have to say in regards to the possibility that this will cause future Karens, future folks to simply fear while jogging what could happen to them if they see an African-American male on the trail or out in the woods with them or on the bike path. Because this makes news. Looking in the comments, where did black folks learn to shag pants? I can't really answer that question. I've never done it other than just not fastening my belt properly. Sometimes my ass get exposed. It's not deliberately. I've heard that it's based on poorly fitted jumpsuits in prison. When you're incarcerated, they give you whatever size they have available, and they often don't fit. And folks brought that custom onto the street. Now, I may be wrong on that. As I stated before, I do not engage in sagging of my pants. I am a 50-year-old man, way too old for that shit. And the last thing I want to do is find myself in a situation where I need to move in a manner of haste and trip over my own damn pants. So I don't know for certain where that came from, but I'm not going. I don't partake in it. What does a Karen have to do with a murderer? Murderers have the potential of creating Karens, P. Marie. The fact is, the Karens often make these phone calls, unwarranted phone calls to police on black people because they fear African Americans based on things they see in the news. Make no mistake about it, if you're a right-winger and you watch right-wing media, you hear a lot of negative shit about black people. I mean, how often do right-wingers bring up Chicago? Seriously, how often do they bring up the inner city crime in Chicago? Over and over and over again. The entire war on drugs, some would argue, was because of African Americans making money in the drug trade. So when you ask, what does a Karen have to do with a murderer? Murderers can create Karens. One African American does something, and it's plastered everywhere. And folks start judging the entire race based on that one African American. Really similar to the argument about, what do they say, a few bad apples when it comes to police. One cop gets caught doing something bad and it affects the entire department. For some strange reason, this doesn't translate the same way to Caucasians. I don't know why, but I mean, nobody looks at a mass shooter and says, well, you can't trust any white person with a gun. But it does translate to African Americans. There are African Americans that get, deemed as rapists. What did Trump say, rapists and murderers? We had that title. We were the ones that had that title. So, it is. That's why I'm asking, can they create a Karen? Looking in the comments, pants sagging is a jailhouse thing to let other inmates know they are on the down low. Really? User, you're saying that in jail, they wear their pants low to let other inmates know that they're down with LGBT activities. I've never heard that. I appreciate the input. I'll have to hear that from some other folks. That's the first thing. I know some pretty hard-ass guys that wear their shit down low. Right-wingers are afraid of everything, says Gone Flobbles. Well, they're not afraid of guns. As long as another right-winger has that gun in their possession, they'll go sit down in a coffee diner full of guns. As long as all the patrons are right-wingers. So I don't know about that. Yep, he called Mexicans rapists and murderers. Yes, indeed. M. Freeze. By Don. Assumes that speaking in regards to President Trump, by Don. Good evening there, sir.
How's it going? I just wanted to point out that what you're saying about white people and black people is because most white people have been conditioned to believe that black people are bad just because of the color of their skin.
Where did that conditioning come from?
Probably the media.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was saying is I guess you're talking in the same avenue of it, portraying the worst among us and things like that.
Exactly. That's what they do. They only show us the worst of you, and it's fucking terrible.
Yeah. I've brought this up several times. Often we talk about politics, and Candace Owens comes up, and folks always ask me, what do I think of Candace Owens? And while I do believe she is an intelligent talking head, an intelligent analyst, she does exactly this, which is why most African Americans do not like her. She does exactly what you and I are discussing. She portrays the worst about African Americans.
I don't know if I can really say this because I'm white, but I would venture to call Candace Owens an Uncle Tom, to be completely honest with you.
Well, you can join the millions with that comment. Hell, I get called an Uncle Tom and Uncle Ruckus and the sellout. But yeah, Candace Owens, I would assume that her audience is probably at least 90% non-black. I think blacks probably represent the smallest portion of her audience.
And what's crazy about that is I think there's a real chance that she's the person that runs for vice president for the Republican Party in 2024. I think it might be her and DeSantis.
You think they would
I think DeSantis is going to pick her. Yes, I do.
I can't see that. Okay, Candace Owens, other than being known for criticizing the negatives from the African American community, what else is she even known for?
Nothing, but I think that they think that she would bring in the female vote. And if we're being honest, I agree, but I think they may think that. And if we're being honest, in our country, it's the females that decide most of the elections.
True. Well, there are more of them than us too. But I will say this. I often talk to my right wingers because my audience is primarily MAGA, and that's fine. But, I always bring up the point of, for some reason, even though the right wingers tend to think folks like Biden is racist and intolerant, I always tell them you need to get your point across better to black people who seem to think the Republicans are the ones that are racist. And putting Candace Owens as the VP candidate will not help that image at all.
Not at all.
Yeah, well, that would be a horrible choice.
I would venture to guess that because of the era most of the older people in our government grew up in, that 90% of them are probably racist.
Well, it was the norm. And I will say this, being open and totally candid, I grew up in the 70s and 80s. And us guys were anti-LGBT.
we would say, well, that's gay, or make jokes about that community all the time. And it's unfortunate, but it's because that was the norm at that time to be. If you were a guy, you were
Oh, I know.
anti-LGBT.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm a 80s baby myself. I know all too
yeah.
well.
So yeah, if you grew up in the era with Trump or Biden, Nancy Pelosi in that era, yeah, chances are you probably are intolerant to some degree, because it was certainly the norm when they came up.
That's what I mean. And Trump and Biden both came of age in the 60s. So
Yeah.
it stands to reason that both of them are probably a bit racist.
Yeah. Well, I would think Biden goes back. Biden probably can remember the 50s, if I'm correct. I mean, Biden is, what is he, like 76, 77?
He's
He goes back
79
before
and
the 60s.
he's 79 and Trump's about to be 76.
Yeah, they probably can remember some of the 1950s as well. So yeah, they really go back. They really go back in that era. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, obviously
Yeah, that's what I
Trump has
mean.
lost.
They grew up during Jim Crow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and obviously President Trump has lost lawsuits involving, racism and things like that with his properties and stuff. So yeah, it would not surprise me if either him or Biden. Well, Biden has a past as well. I mean, Biden gets no pass on that. Biden has that past also.
No, like I said, I believe they're both probably racist.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I see someone in the comments is saying I'm clueless. John Vischer says I'm clueless. I'd sure like to know how. But yeah, so you really think Candace Owens? You think Ron DeSantis would entertain putting Candace Owens out there?
Yes, because I think they think she'll be able to pull in the female vote, but I think it will blow up in their face though.
I mean, like, you're not going to get the black female vote, obviously. You're not going to get probably the Hispanic female vote, and you're going to lose the liberal white woman vote. I mean, you're only going to get white right-wingers.
My personal opinion, though, I don't think she's going to get the nomination, but the Republican that I think would have the best chance to win in 24 is Nikki Haley.
Yep. Nikki Haley, if she came out fairly moderate, I think she could definitely get most of the independents and even some liberals. I like Nikki Haley. She also is the one that removed the Confederate flag from the Capitol building in South Carolina. Nikki Haley, and she got the hell out of the Trump administration pretty early on. So yeah, Nikki Haley would be a good choice.
She's one of very few Republicans I can actually stand.
Yeah, well, what about Ben Carson?
He's okay too.
Okay, all right.
I see somebody in the comments. I see somebody in the comments said Marjorie Taylor Greene for vice president. That you would lose that election so bad it's not even funny.
Yeah, I think there's a hell of a lot of Liz Cheney's and Mitt Romney's that would not even support Marjorie Taylor Greene. No. What about Condoleezza Rice?
Yeah, that's probably not a bad idea.
I don't think she would work well with MAGA though, because MAGA does not like the Bush administration.
No, not at all. So my question though is, if let's say Biden doesn't run, where do you think the Democrats go?
Well, Gavin Newsom is already in the on deck circle, so we know Gavin.
That's what I think. That's what I think too. But he keeps saying he doesn't want to run.
Yeah, so does Ron DeSantis. But no, I don't. I can see Gavin Newsom definitely.
And who do you think? And who do you think is his? And who do you think would be his vice president?
Nobody really gives a shit about the vice president. Who did Hillary Clinton pick? Tim Kaine? Nobody knew who he was.
That's true.
People knew who Mike Pence was. How many people knew who Mike Pence was before Trump?
Not very many.
Yeah, nobody really gives a shit about the vice president unless they are just outrageous. I didn't know too much about Kamala Harris. I hadn't really heard about her. I mean, she wasn't that big of a name.
I would say the last vice president that anybody really knew who they were would have been the first Bush, because he was the CIA director prior to being president.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. The first. Yeah, that's probably about the only one. Even Al Gore, I don't remember knowing much about Al Gore before he came up. So yeah, that's what I said. Nobody really cares. As long as you should vet the person, not to get someone that's too freaking wild, like Candace Owens, for instance, would be a horrible VP pick. But if as long as the person doesn't have a history of making, horrible statements, people are really looking at the president.
Hey, Florida man, you say Trump's never been racist, right? In the 70s, he sued the entire state of New York for the right not to rent to minorities, right?
Well, the reason that my MAGA folks often see Trump as not being racist is because the things that we consider to be racist, they either dismiss them or don't agree with it. I mean, like, for instance, when Trump tweeted out that blacks are responsible for nearly all white homicides, 81%, the Trump supporters stated, well, he didn't say it himself, he just retweeted it, which really would mean that if you're president, let's say, for instance, I became president, I could tweet out quotes from Farrakhan, who is a stark racist, all day long. As long as it doesn't come from my mouth, he's calling people blue-eyed devils and all kinds of shit. But as long as I don't say it, I can tweet it out and it's not racist. I thought that was ridiculous. So it is
that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem that the MAGA people don't seem to understand. Is it matters what the president of the United States says. It matters what he portrays. It matters what he posts on the internet because the whole world is watching that man.
Yeah. Well, that's been the argument from day one is pay attention to what he does and ignore what he says. And that's really an admission because what he is saying is not helping him out. So we really like the policies and legislation, and we're kind of hoping you ignore the things he's saying because it's not helping his campaign.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is none of his policies were that great anyway. I mean, everybody's so crazy about his tax plan, but if you actually read his tax plan, what you find is he cut the average American's taxes for 1 year, and then he raised them every year until 2027.
Well, even as a liberal, I gotta disagree. I thought correcting the trade imbalance with China was a good policy at the very least to attempt. I thought doing the same thing with Mexico because I think NAFTA is not in our best interest to some degree, and making it so that we could sell U.S. products abroad as opposed to having to import everything and then they making it almost impossible to sell our stuff there. I thought he was on to something there. I'm a fan of protecting the border. I just am not a fan
I don't think everything he did was completely horrible.
Okay.
But I think it would be totally detrimental for our country for that man to get that much power again.
Yeah. Well, that would be. I think it would be detrimental for literally anyone to get the sort of power where he suggested he could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and they would. Yeah, that's dangerous. I don't think anyone should have that power. But I got to move on. I'll give you the last word there.
Just we seem to agree quite a bit. I mean, I don't really know what else to say, but man, have a good night.
Absolutely a pleasure. All right, Don. Good talk. Okay.
By the way, his name was Biden, Byedon. Thank you for that hat. Just a dad. I love that name. Biden was indicating goodbye Donald Trump. That's how his name was. And I see Iggy NXN said the guest was 100%. Agreed with Biden there. It's obvious he doesn't know how to handle top secret intel, Sadie kids. Even though I wasn't going to talk about Trump, I wish I had queued up his quote of how he was going to be very responsible after Hillary Clinton's emails and make sure that sensitive documents in this country were treated properly. That's what he said after Hillary Clinton's debacle. All right, going back to the box. Southern Woodworking. We're talking about the...
But if you guys want to really keep it on Trump, I'll give you the mic. Let me know what's on your mind, and we will take it down that path. Southern Wood, good afternoon or good evening. Okay, Southern Woodworker. I guess he's been on hold. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Oh, damn. All right. I was bringing him on. Unfortunately, I dropped that gentleman a little bit early. He was coming on. Southern Woodworking. Come on, I'll bring you back next. Bring facts. Bring facts 3.0. Southern Wood, if you're back, I'll bring you on next. Okay.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Good evening.
How you doing, man?
None at all. I'm doing good. You been listening to the program?
Yes, I have. And,
Okay,
man, And I've been in the
Go
comments.
ahead.
It's been kind of crazy. Like people think that Donald Trump wasn't racist or that he's never been racist. It doesn't make any sense. Like this is a man. Remember, he was 27 at the time in 1973. Donald Trump was prosecuted for racial discrimination, violation of
Yeah.
the Fair Housing Act. All right. Then again, they were put on
Okay.
probation. Cost them $1 million. They cost him millions of dollars in fines. Him and his father. They were named defendants in this. They were caught in a sting between the Department of Justice. This is the Nixon Department of Justice. All right, and the New York City Housing Commission. All right, because what they wouldn't do, they basically countersued so that they could actually discriminate against people of color in renting properties to them. All right. Then the thing is, they were put on probation for about 18 months, and then afterwards did it again in 1975. Then same cycle again for 3 years.
Twice.
Yes, no, 3 times, because then they did it. They got put on probation for 3 years, and then they waited a little bit longer and did it again in 1981. Then you have how Donald Trump told lies about Native American casino owners, literally tried to get them caught in all types of criminality when they didn't do anything wrong, lied about them in the press repeatedly. Then you
wait. What lie did he talk about in regards to Native American casino owners? What do you say he lied about?
He said that on the reservation that they were actually strong arming Native American reservation residents. He said that they were actually violating food, like basically restaurant and food codes in their restaurants and their casinos. He said that they were lying about their actual tax disclosures. He said they were lying about their charitable organizations. He basically accused them of everything he was doing, that he was doing himself. And he was ticked off because they could get because they basically could get casino licenses and he wasn't able to, because basically Donald Trump did something really silly back in the 80s. He opened up he did the casino equivalent of opening up 3 Starbucks on the same corner, because he opened up 3 casinos in a market that couldn't support one of them. Atlantic City Atlantic City is not Vegas, but he opened up 3 casinos at the same time in a venue that could barely open it. To this day, no joke, I kid you not, to this day, 1 out of 8 people that are unemployed in the state of New Jersey are unemployed because of his casino owner, because of his casinos. Basically, businesses he destroyed by basically getting their business, but never paying them or paying them pennies on the dollar, destroying many people's businesses. Oh yeah. Carpenters, marble people, vendors regarding food service, linen folks, all that type of stuff. He just didn't pay his bills.
Yeah, but what about the possibility he's just, I guess you'd almost say, a con man as opposed to being a racist?
No, I'm saying that I'm saying that the things that he did, they were racist. First off, the violations of the Fair Housing Act were racially based, because his own one of his own secretaries was testified against him in his fair housing violations, because what they would do is what they did in the sting was they sent a black couple in to try and rent a property, and then they would either steer them away from the high-end ones and try and send them to, low-income housing or something totally separate and everything. And I'm talking about even they basically got celebrities involved in this, names that you would expect that can pay. How in the world are you not realizing Harry Belafonte could pay for this?
Let me ask you this now. Organizer in the comments asked a question that you'll hear from a lot of MAGA folks in regards to President Trump and what you're stating. His question is, who cares if his business has failed? Now, when he's running for president, go ahead.
No, that was just extra. I was pointing out that he was a racist, but as far as his business is failing, first off, the federal government is the exact opposite of a corporation. All right? Because in a corporation, you have employees at the bottom, CEO, your board, and everything at the top. We are the ones that are in charge, because our vote is the one thing that actually is a great equalizer between us and definitely with our elected officials. It's not the other way around. It's exactly the opposite of a business. And he tried to repeatedly run the federal government like it was a business, where he was in charge and nobody had to question him. He owns everything. He can do anything he wants. And that's not it. There's enumerated powers, things the legislative branch does. Everything else at the federal level is the executive. The SCOTUS is the referee, and everything that's not involved there then you basically leave to the states thanks to the 10th Amendment.
You
That's how
know,
it works.
I've often said on the program for folks who support Trump that he would have been a lot more effective in a dictatorship. For exactly what you're suggesting is that when you run as president, you have to coexist with the Senate, with the House, as you're mentioning with the SCOTUS. But as when you're running your own business, it's a my way or the highway scenario. And Trump is a businessman. He was used to
But the
running a
thing is,
my way or the highway.
yeah, but the thing is, he's a corrupt businessman. People always forget this one basic fact. Remember, he had a TV show. All right, he was a game show
Yeah,
host, right? Reality
yeah,
TV kind of game show host, right? On that game show,
yeah.
you know why he lost? Do you know why he lost his TV show? Because
Well, it was his language, if I'm correct. He said things that
nope,
NBC didn't like.
no, no, it wasn't that. People liked the fact that he was kind of people kind of enjoyed that the same way they do Gordon Ramsay. People kind of like that whole gruff sort of thing. The issue was actually criminality because on his last season that he appeared on, all right, he had a project called Trump Soho. It's supposed to be this kind of bohemian, yuppie sort of, Soho, South of Houston sort of project that was supposed to be this high end housing and all that type of stuff. The Apprentice, right? But the thing
Okay.
is, turns out that Trump Soho was a Russian mob money laundering scheme.
Oh my God. The Russians keep coming up in mix with his name. I mean, I hear Russian collusion delusion all the time, but for
Like
some reason,
people always say that was Russia was a hoax. You know what? This is the thing. In the whole Russia thing, first off, immediately after Trump came into office, all 17 U.S. intelligence agencies testified that Russia did interfere in the 2016 election, and they brought
right.
receipts. They showed that Russia paid a hacking organization called Guccifer 2.0. Guccifer 2.0 was the name of it. They hacked 22 different state voter registration rolls. That basically allows for you to basically not have to waste any money or oversaturate an area you're not going to win because you know which voters, where exactly their areas, their addresses, and everything. You can perfectly allocate funds. That's the reason why Hillary Clinton spent so much more than Trump, because she didn't have that extra information. And you know how we know that Trump had that information? Because Guccifer 2.0 did both voter registration, did the 22 state voter registration rolls, and both the RNC and DNC. They hacked them too. The John Podesta emails, Hillary's
So
emails.
let me ask you
And
this.
that was in touch with Julian Assange, and then
Okay.
that Julian Assange was in touch with Roger Stone in the Trump campaign. There's 2 degrees of separation between the hacker and the Trump campaign. But continue.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
so
about
let me ask you this in regards to what you're saying right now. Beyonce's pinky toe, that's a hell of a name, but Beyonce's pinky toe is suggesting what you're saying is common knowledge in one internet search away, but the cult cannot be bothered. In regards to what you're saying, why do you believe it is so difficult to get MAGA Trump supporters to even listen to this?
Really simple. All right. The entire time, I'm talking about since he was not before he'd even won the primary, back in 2015, before he'd even run the primary, Donald Trump was already telling his supporters when they were actually just kind of a niche portion of the left of the right wing electorate. All right, and then they kind of took over the Republican Party. Long before that, he was already telling them that he was the only arbiter of what the truth is, and he had his buddy, what's his name, Roger Ailes at Fox News, helping him because they've been friends for literally 30 years. All right. He had friends. These are people that used to actually help him with these capture and kill sort of things regarding stories that were going to be embarrassing or anything to him.
With
that
the
sort of stuff.
Inquirer, with the Inquirer.
Yeah, they've been doing this for years. All right. He had friends over there. He had Roger Ailes when it came to network news. He basically got all this extra, like absolutely free press you could never actually pay for. He basically got about $10 billion worth of free press by just being crazy and saying things that were outrageous, making up little nicknames about people. But the thing is, this entire time he was telling his supporters, I'm the only one you can listen to. Don't listen to anyone else. If you hear something negative about me, it's a lie. It's fake news. And the thing is, fake news was his version. He's basically going along the fascist playbook. All right. I'm the only arbiter. The press is actually the enemy. I'm the only arbiter of the truth. We're going to go back to a great time of the past, an aggrieved past that we need to go back to. Traditional gender roles, hyper religious, exaltation of the military,
Okay,
all of those things.
Let me ask you this though. In regards to going back to the past, do you see any racism in that at all? The "Keep America Great" slogan.
It's a very simple thing. When somebody tells me "Make America Great Again," first thing, and it's an obvious question. Again, so when, or roughly when are you talking about? And the thing is, whenever we're talking about right-wing policy, every time you ever talk to anybody who's a conservative or right-leaning, the time that they're talking about is somewhere roughly 30 years ago. Nowadays, they belong for the tail end of the Reagan administration. All right? Or the or the first Bush administration. In the Bush administration and such, they long for the Eisenhower, the 50s. So in the 80s, they were basically long for the 50s. All right, they were nostalgic. It was even part of our zeitgeist. That's what we were doing, freaking 50s style music. Remember, what's his name? Bruce Setzer, the jump jiving, then you wailing and you jump. That guy. All right, and then in the 50s, they longed for before the Depression. Back to the 20s. All right, so every time that you have a conservative mindset, their Overton window of what's right is basically about 30 years ago, and the reason it's about 30 years ago is because that's just long enough. All right, for it to be something that you can be nostalgic for, that you heard about, but never lived yourself.
Okay, all right. I've heard it differently from different people, but listen, I do got to move it on. Big facts.
All right, man.
Appreciate you coming through. Good talk, man. You came with your A game tonight. You came with your A game.
All right, man. Take it easy.
All right, move it. All right, okay, move it.
Looking in the Big Facts, you're on a roll, says Defend 3747. What has Democrats done for the black people? This is what William Kelly is saying. Well, depends on where you want to look at. The George Floyd bill that was shot down, that was something that was overwhelmingly favored by African Americans coming from Joe Biden for giving tuition assistance. African Americans wanted more than $10,000, but they certainly were welcoming the $10,000. Joe Biden is for a minimum wage increase, which probably will not happen because you can't do it federally. It's a state thing, but yeah. Well, you can do it federally, but it doesn't apply to many people. But when you ask what he's done for the blacks, either through appointment or association, he is responsible for the first black president, Barack Obama. He's responsible for the first black Asian female vice president with Kamala Harris. Ketanji Brown makes the first female black Supreme Court justice. In fact, his administration is loaded with LGBT members, African Americans, Hispanics, Muslims. He even has a trans member on his community. So I often bring this up when folks suggest that Trump is the one that is intolerant, or better yet, Trump is the one that really loves minorities and Biden is the intolerant one. I always bring that up is that when you look at the Trump administration right in front of you, you got Ben Carlson, you got Omarosa, who ended up going afoul of Trump pretty quickly. But there wasn't a lot of diversity on the Trump administration. But when you look at Biden, it looks like the rainbow. So it's a case of don't believe your lying eyes. Now, I understand that the HBCU thing comes up all the time. But there has to be more to it than just that. That can't be the only thing. Now, if he had to work with Kim Kardashian and got a hell of a lot of African Americans out of jail and actually passed some serious criminal justice reform, I think we would have been a little bit better off. But that didn't happen. I'm going to go back to Southern Woodworking.
And actually communicate this time. I wasn't able to get through last time. Southern Woodworking.
I can hear you. You got me this time?
Good to have you on, loud and clear. Have you been listening to the program?
I have, yes.
What's on your mind this evening?
Well, I've been listening since you came on, and
okay.
So you were.
Well, we were originally, and I mean, listen. Most folks on my platform typically like to talk politics, but we were talking about the murder of Elisa Fletcher in Memphis by this Cleotha guy who literally an African American snatching up a white woman. And I was bringing up the point of, is it possible to create Karens? Now, this was a subject that was not very favorite on the broadcast, but did you hear about this whole case?
Well, I didn't hear about it until tonight when my wife mentioned it to me.
Okay.
So now I have heard about it. I heard about it. She was I don't know if you know that Disney every year in Florida does a princess run, right? Every year they do princess runs.
I don't know what is that?
So they do like a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon. Um,
Okay.
and my and like people dress up in like costumes like Disney characters.
So
And
are you saying that your wife participates in this, and she while training, while jogging, she encounters African Americans on the jogging trail or something?
no. I'm just saying my wife is part of this Disney run that they do every
Okay.
year, and she's done it every year since they started. Um, so no, I don't. She runs all around our city, and she's never mentioned to me anything about African Americans uh, saying anything rude to her
Okay.
uh,
She doesn't
or
automatically. I mean, because like one of my previous callers suggested, a lot of the fear in regards to African Americans is media based. So, in other words, she has not let the media sway her opinion of minorities.
no, I don't think so.
Does she
Uh,
have minority friends or relatives or any associates?
Definitely, yeah, yeah.
Okay. The reason I ask that, not to be facetious, but the reason I ask that is because it is often easier to avoid stereotypes when you actually know people on the other side. When you don't know people on the other side, then you are more likely to be victimized by stereotypes. If I don't associate with any white people, all I do know is what I see on TV. But if you actually start associating with people, you do start finding out, well, they're not all this and they're not all that. So if she actually has minorities as friends and associates, that's probably why she's not swayed as easy.
Okay, but do you think that that's like a Republican point of view? You don't think that Democrats could have that point of view?
Yeah, it could absolutely. Listen, I'm not gonna believe that I could just walk up to Nancy Pelosi's house and sell Girl Scout cookies. But I will
Right?
say, but I will tell you this: when you start talking about the lower earning Democrats versus the lower earning Republicans, I would say it's going to be more prevalent on the Republican side. Now, wealthy is wealthy. Like I mentioned, Nancy Pelosi or somebody like that. Wealthy is wealthy. They don't want shit to do with poor people. And we represent most of the poor people in the country. But when you're talking about just a regular pull yourself up by your boots, hardworking American that votes right or left, I think a lot of more members on the left side of the aisle have more affiliation with minorities in general. So, like we think about it, when you go to some of the poorer Republican states, blacks are going to be more sparse. I mean, how many blacks live in Wyoming or Idaho or rural Georgia where a lot of poor Republicans live? They don't have a lot of association with them.
Well, I live in Georgia. Um, I'm not very rural. I'm kind of like in the middle of. I'm in between like Atlanta and rural, so I'm
Okay.
kind of right suburbs. But I mean, I think that people are raised a certain way. Um, Blame it on parents. That's what I blame it
Yeah.
on.
Absolutely. I agree with that as well. I mean, but when I mention rural America, because I see folks in the comments, rural America is overwhelmingly Republican, and it's overwhelmingly white too, by the way. But rural America, the Democrats don't do very well in the rural counties across this country. Even in liberal states, the rural areas tend to vote red.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I'm talking
Well,
about. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think that if you when you get out into rural, counties and cities and things like that, there's minorities are not there. It's mostly white, but I don't think that has anything to do with Republican or Democrat. I think that has, um, it has a lot to do with what you're taught, what you're brought up with. And, back to your point about Karens, if you're taught that a black person is bad growing up, and I mean maybe some people are, and I've even seen studies that you can hold a white baby and a black baby dolls up to a
Yes,
kid and say
that is.
which one.
I know what you're talking about. For folks watching this, if you go on YouTube and type in the doll test, the DOLL test, you're
Yeah.
talking about where they put a black, white, and Hispanic doll in front of children, white kids,
Yes.
black kids, and Hispanic kids, and they all unanimously, I believe, picked the black doll and said most of the negative things about it, and said even the black girl, even the little black child, kindergartens, even
Yeah.
I will tell you, in my opinion, that is based on the education in this country. That our
I believe
educational
that
system.
100%.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this: my daughter's 3 right now, and on her second birthday, she had some gift cards. So we took her to Target. It was either Target or Walmart or something, so she could spend her gift cards. You know what she picked out? A black
Right.
baby doll.
Wow. That's progress. We need stuff like this. I'll tell you this: as a child of the '70s and '80s, I grew up watching cartoons. I can't think of any black heroes back then, like the Supermans. All of your superheroes were white. I mean, the astronauts, the doctors there was really no one black to
You're right,
idolize.
man.
So it would be obvious why a black child would think whites are better than blacks, because when you
Yeah.
seen blacks, they were working factory jobs and menial positions in real life and on television. They did not
Yeah.
have any, one or two TV shows, maybe. So, yeah, I believe the education we teach in this system was deeply rooted in misleading images.
Yeah. And, I was so proud of my daughter for picking that black doll. And
Yeah.
my son, he just turned 6 uh, last month. My kids have never asked me about color. And then uh, um, my wife, I was asking her a question about one of the little kids that was at his birthday party. There was a black boy at his birthday party. He had, he has black friends, Mexican friends, and my wife said, I asked who was John, and she said, oh, it was the little black boy. And my son heard that, and then the next time I asked about John, he said, oh, he was the little black boy. So, and I almost looked at my wife and was like, God, I wish you didn't say that, because I don't
Right.
want I don't want our kids. I don't want them to see color. Don't see
Yeah.
color. It doesn't matter what color they are. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Now I
Um,
will. I'll say this real quick in the comments. Florida man DB said, "I grew up watching the Cosby Show, Good Times, and looked up to them." I don't know how people would really look up to Good Times. They lived in the projects, but that was far more realistic. That was far more realistic than the Cosby Show. I mean, even when you look at white America, how many Americans have a doctor for a mom and a lawyer for a dad? That was, and certainly in the African American community, they would be among the 1%, but made for a good
oh
sitcom. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I grew up poor, man. I grew up single mom. Dad wasn't around. Uh, grew up poor. Ended up joining the military, making something of
Did you see it?
myself.
Did you see any of this? Did you see any of that intolerance in the military?
Any of what?
Racism, intolerance.
No, definitely not.
Okay.
No, man. when you're in the military, color doesn't matter. Colors never mattered to me.
Though. Yeah, but I'll tell you this though. When you talk to African American military service personnel, they claim they did see it. And I'll just tell you this: throughout the history of the country, African Americans have always claimed to see more racism than whites. I mean, it's just so when you say you didn't see it, chances are, if you talk to minorities that served alongside of you, they might have a different opinion.
That may be true. I work with a lot of minorities now. I'm a fireman, and a lot of my brothers are black. So,
yeah,
I don't know, man. I love them just as much as I would love anybody else. They're I consider my brothers part of my family. So
all right.
just because I'm a Republican.
How do you feel about? I got to move the program, but I want to ask you this before I let you go. How do you feel about the Confederate flag wavers that show up oftentimes at Republican gatherings? Do you see that flag as harmless with no racism in it at all?
I can see both sides.
Give me both sides of it. Give me both sides.
Okay. So it upsets me that like a lot of monuments have been torn down, which is it's American history, right? So
is Bin Laden. So is the destruction of Bin Laden. That's American history as well. You want a statue to him?
I mean, he didn't do anything for America, so no.
You think the Confederates did something to benefit America?
I'm just saying it's history.
So it's Bin Laden. That's what I'm saying. So is Bin Laden.
That doesn't make any sense though, because Bin Laden is not an American.
Okay, what about Timothy McVeigh? Blew up the Oklahoma City blew up the building in Oklahoma City. You think he should get a statue? He's an American.
Okay, well that doesn't make any sense either, because he didn't do anything great for America.
And I'm asking you that. What did the Confederates do that is great for America?
I'm not saying.
You mentioned great. You mentioned that the people I brought up didn't do anything great for America, as if someone else did. I'm trying to figure out why you brought up the term great for America.
Okay, well, they're Americans. They have heritage. Heritage runs deep in a lot of places. And history, I don't believe, should be erased. I don't believe it should be erased from anywhere. I don't think anybody should ever forget what Bin Laden did. I don't believe anybody should ever forget what Timothy McVeigh did. I don't believe that they should have statues, but if they were there already, it's a part of history. It's a part of history, man. It's like ripping pages out of history books. You shouldn't do that.
Let me give you a real world example. Joe Paterno, he was the coach of the Pennsylvania State football team.
I know about Joe.
You know about him?
Yeah, the pedophile.
Yeah. Do you believe his statue should have been taken down? After all, it was part of history.
Yeah.
It's part of history. You're erasing history, right?
I mean,
you do understand a lot of the Confederates were pedophiles as well, right?
No, I did not know that. And
you think all of these you would realize that literally anytime a slave master had relations with a slave, it was rape. They didn't have an option to say no.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I know we don't really talk a lot about the sheer amount of rapes in this country, but the only way you could create more slaves is to force a female slave to breed with another. She didn't have the option to say no to any of that. So you would have to assume that the vast majority of slaves that were created through a product of rape. They just sent another big burly guy in there and told him breathe.
Let me tell you this: if any of those people on those statues had raped anybody, then I would say yes, take it down. But your question,
you think they would tell you that? You think they would honestly tell you that? They don't even talk about the rapes now. You think they would actually tell you which individual ones did that? They're not even going to tell you that. They're going to keep that hidden.
Your question was about the Confederate flag, right?
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
So, what harm has the Confederate flag done? I don't look. It's been taken off of several platforms. Even my own state's flag used to have the Confederate flag. I live in Georgia.
Okay.
It used to have the Confederate flag. It's gone now, and I don't have any problem with that.
Okay.
But I guess my point is, it's hard to erase history because your history is still there.
But no matter the question, here's where you're confusing me. Just like when I mentioned Joe Paterno of Pennsylvania, just because you took his statue down does not mean the history of him winning games for Pennsylvania goes away. A statue is not history; it's a tribute to history. It is honoring history. But what happened has happened. You cannot undo what happened, whether there is a statue there or not. It's not erasing history. Hitler has no statues in America, yet it is a well-known part of our history. You don't need a statue for history to exist.
Right. See, I mean, you make good points, and it's good to have this discourse, right? You make good points.
Fair point.
And it's hard to argue your good points.
Yeah.
But,
well, I will tell you this as well. Being in the being military yourself, you'd understand when we went into Iraq, there were Saddam statues everywhere. We took all that shit down. That didn't erase the history of Saddam Hussein.
No, you'll never. He did.
Yeah.
And
his history will remain there forever, statue or not.
Right. You'll never undo what anybody in our history did either. It's there. It's there forever. Can't undo it. Can only try to do better, right?
Yep, that is true. So I just want to say that regardless of how you may feel about statues coming down, I just want people to get out of the habit of saying taking down a statue erases history. The history is there. The history is in books everywhere. The statue has nothing to do with your history. It's just an honor or tribute to it. Taking away the statue does not erase what actually took place.
Okay, well, you make great points. Just like, I mean, you make great points. So I could honestly take back my statement about me hating the statues getting taken down because of the points that you made. And
I appreciate that. Say that. Well, and that's what we have in here, civil discourse. But listen, Southern, you're always welcome back. I do have to move it on. You were a very interesting caller, but I do got to move it on. Anytime you see me on here, man, come on back through. All right. Have a good night.
Take care.
Okay. You too. Look
at the comments here. Love witnessing positive, constructive conversations. Thank you both. And we do appreciate that. Beyonce's pinky toe. By the way, slavery. Oh, that's a nice owl. H2O. Appreciate the love. By the way, slavery has been a part of our heritage from the beginning of time. Minuteman 65, yes. And there are a lot of folks who would prefer that we simply get over that. It's happened hundreds of years ago. Why can't you guys get past that? I suppose we could go around town putting up statues. All right, let me go back to the box. Facts matter. I see Ben.
Ben, facts matter.
Hey there.
Good evening to you.
Damn it. I was so ready to slice and dice his argument. And then he came clean. You know, but it is interesting.
That's a good thing.
Yes, and I hope people he had his come to Jesus moment in earnest. I do. I support that.
Well, why do you believe so many folks believe that flag is harmless. It's just a part of heritage. Why do you think so many folks, not talking about him, but a lot of folks in general believe that flag is not harmless or not insightful at all? It's just a part of history.
First, you're going to have to prove to me that they actually do believe that.
I can't respond to that. Keep going.
Talk is fucking cheap. They know what it is. When I don't have my tan on, they consider me a white guy. So I get to, I've got a club member card that I hear the bullshit. So they can save that argument. So a few points I've noticed. He at one point, but again, he did back off of it. But I noticed words matter to me, and he said, "Hard to argue your point, but again, he did go back off. But I'm good with that. And by the way, fucking Fat Albert, I never missed Fat Albert. He may not have been a superhero, but he was my superhero.
Yeah, and he was nothing for African Americans to look up to at all. He was just like any other kid, just a regular kid in the neighborhood hanging out.
But that's a good thing, just another kid, and that's how we saw him, just another kid. Although that didn't work out for the host too well, did it?
Well, I guess he looked a little bit better than Buckwheat.
Yeah, but I never looked at Buckwheat racially, to tell you the truth.
With all that nappy wait. With all that nappy ass hair, he wasn't even kept. He was unkept.
I'm not supporting Alfalfa's hairstyle either, you know? I mean...
All right. Okay. All right. He would look like the stereotypical welfare mom's kid. That's what Buckwheat kind of looked like. Sounded like
if you go back and look at the whole body of work, and of course there's going to be some kind of racism in there, but the fact that even that they brought those kids into there was a pretty momentous move at that time. And also sometimes they had some styling braids in there. If you look at all the work.
Okay. All right. Well, I got to ask you this. This came up in the comments. Big Daddy Todd said rebel flag stands for rebelling against the establishment. People of all ethnicities fly that flag. What do you think about that?
If he wants me to argue that all people aren't stupid, I'm not going to engage that.
Well, I will tell you this. When you look at African Americans, such as yours truly, your humble correspondent, we all are descendants of Southern citizens, folks who were brought over as slaves. All of us. My mom's side can be traced back to Memphis. My dad's side can be traced back to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Yet, even though African Americans, percentage-wise, we probably have more ties to the South than anyone because we all came from that area. And we don't, and overwhelmingly, we do not fly the flag. So when he says folks of all ethnicities, there's not a lot of African Americans walking around flying the Confederate flag. There are some, but it's very minuscule.
And I think the ones that are doing a bit of that white clout chasing, tell you the truth.
You know, either that or just blatant ignorance. It could be some candy showing. I get what you're saying, but some of these guys, I mean, and let's just be honest.
Well, nothing's 100%.
Yeah, there were blacks who fought for the Confederates.
And to add on to your Dow test, there's also psychological tests that have been shown that all people of all races best way I can put this to summarize, they find suspicion with darker people. The darker the people, the more suspicious they are of them. So it's something, and I'm not even going to delve into what my opinion is, what the causational part of that is. But it is something that's in us.
Yeah.
So it's not just.
I'll tell you this. I'll give it to you two ways. First of all, growing up myself, we also treated light-skinned girls as a more prized catch and light-skinned people better. But I will tell you this, now that I've gotten older, one group of people that I can tell you I don't think has that same mindset anymore. White women. White women seem to like darker guys for some reason. There is no shortage of white women that like very dark guys. And
I don't think that's actually changed.
I think it's always been that way. It's just not. It's just been taboo to actually admit it.
Yeah. I don't think it's changed. I think it's just now it's allowed. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. And they don't run from They don't run from dark guys. Look at Seal and Heidi Klum. Seal had a real good time for a while.
Folks are doing folks. And also, you're about your. I have a lie. Also, he lied about the Russian tower deal he had going on.
What do you mean?
Trump. He had a deal to build a tower in a Trump tower in
the
Russia.
skyscraper. He
right,
he
but
was
he
on
lied
course
and
to
said
build
he had no business dealings going on in Russia when he was a candidate. He lied about that.
Yeah. He was on. Yeah, he was on par to build the largest skyscraper in Russia. I am aware of that. Yeah.
And something that you had mentioned that was I'm contrary to, if their premise is they voted for Trump because he's a businessman, then the fact that he is a failed businessman is relevant.
Well, I'll give you this. It's hard to look at a guy if you believe him. Now, he said he's worth $10 billion. Forbes obviously disagrees.
Yeah, they say $3 billion.
He says he's worth $10
billion. And that's in assets. That's not cash.
Well, I'm just going to say this. When you're looking at a guy with gold toilets in his own jet, it's hard to view him as a failure. I'm just being honest with you. The guy has more shit than the average human being. So even though he's
but you know what? They said if he had just taken the money that his dad had initially given him and invested it, he'd be worth more than he is now.
I think it would have been worth more if he had just not ran for president. Most of the scams people were holding him accountable for, he would have got away with it if he didn't run for president.
Oh, I definitely agree with that. He would have gone on scamming without being held accountable. And in the end, I believe this is going to be the worst mistake of his life.
Yeah, I agree. I agree financially for certain, but running for president was not a good idea for President Trump. He could have rode off into the sunset, a hero. Even African Americans like the guy. He could have rode off into the sunset, a pretty well-liked, exceptionally wealthy guy. But running for president has destroyed his family name.
There's also and I think there's the possibility that this was how can I put it? A grift gone astray, because I don't believe that he actually planned on actually winning as president. I think it was more of a grand infomercial and to boost his name, yada, 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 and then he could go on from there. But, oops, you got yourself elected. Surprise, surprise, surprise.
You know, you're not the first I've heard suggest that he was doing this for personal gain financially and never thought he was going to win. And actually, you're not the first. You're not the first.
Name recognition, another show, yada yada yada. You know him.
It reminds me. There is a movie with Eddie Murphy, not a well-known movie, but it was called Distinguished Gentleman, in which he ran for office based on a candidate that had passed away and had the same name. And when he became, I think he was a congressman or a senator or something like that, and there were so many scams. He was a con man from the beginning, but he was like, I didn't realize how much cons I could legally get away with until I became a politician.
Right?
He was a scammer, but he was scamming on little stuff. And he became a politician and started finding out he was legally entitled to all sorts of scams, and he was blown away by it. But it's called a Distinguished Gentleman.
And you mentioned something earlier about being a con man. Can he be a con man and a racist? Shit, are you kidding? When you ask Trump that, he says, "Hold my beer." Come on now.
So like my other caller, you believe Trump is racist?
Again, my friend, I've told you about this before. All you got to do is play my Black Where's Waldo version. Go view any Trump rally ever and look at the crowd. Find the black guy. And again, it's not a drinking game.
What about the idea that he's not a racist and maybe he's just an opportunist, and if racists want to support him, he'll just take their vote because he's an opportunist for expanding his.
No, he's both. Okay. He's both. Even back to his rental days with his dad, etc. And if it benefits him to make some deal or with someone of color, he'll of course do it because money is his bottom line. But I mean, he's not known for hanging out with it, and his cabinet, etc. I mean, come on. I'm not going to argue if a horse is a horse.
I get it. All right, I got to move it on, Fats.
Have a good night.
Move it on.
Oh,
right,
wait a second. One thing I forgot to mention. I have not spoken to you since the freaking Trump rally. I watched the Trump rally.
Pennsylvania.
Fucking, yes. Grandpa has lost his mind. He has lost his mind. Well, he stood on that stage, and you're probably aware of this, but there's little subtleties to it. He announced that last week he was in the White House, and Mark Zuckerberg stopped by to kiss his ass.
Yeah, that was a slip of the tongue. We would be saying Biden had
slip
to mention
of the tongue, my ass.
Yeah, and we would be saying.
And here's the crazy part. The crowd, they didn't pause. They didn't even have a moment. They immediately cheered. And I'm going to remind you of the old story, the emperor has no clothes.
Wow. You know, if Biden had done that, folks would be immediately saying that's part of his dementia to think that he's thinking he's still in the White House. But that was well ridiculed on left-wing media. But he absolutely said it. All right, I got to move it on, man.
And crickets on right-wing media. See ya.
Good point. Didn't come up on the 5. All right, got to go. Okay.
Let me go straight back to the box. What did I say? I did not see that for a second. Let's read your comments. Almost 3 hours talking straight. Biden can't last 20 minutes talking. You know, Ultra MAGA 08, love the name Ultra MAGA. You say that Biden cannot last 20 minutes talking. Did you see his speech attacking the MAGA Republicans? That was 20 minutes. In fact, it was 44 minutes or something like that. He didn't do a lot of stuttering, didn't misstep at all. You heard him exactly, loud and clear. That's why you guys are criticizing him so much. So it does appear when he's serious, he can speak. He didn't sound sleepy at all that night. And yeah, he lasted a hell of a lot more than 20 minutes. Okay, going back to the box. All right. I'm going to try this just because folks are bringing it up so much, but I really want to figure out what the hell's going
on. Oh, my friend.
Good evening.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. What's on your mind this evening, man?
Well, first, I just want to say I've been scouting the TikTok lives with the left-wing debaters, and I got to say, you have to be the best one. You give one-on-one opportunities with other people. You're not over-talking. They're very hateful from what I have seen. I haven't run into a lot of the right-wingers because they don't attract a lot of views. I think wild points, such as a lot of the times the left-wingers advocate for, attract more viewers. So I do give you credit, and I do appreciate it, and I'm being very genuine and serious.
Okay.
Now, I wanted to talk about sort of the Civil War argument and what you're talking about. Now, I took AP history in several college classes during the Civil War, and my professor was an African-American man from Louisiana. And I believe
Wait. Let me get you to rephrase that. You said you took a lot of classes during the Civil War.
I'm sorry,
obviously, you're not that old.
On the Civil War and whatnot, and we covered it very extensively, lots of essays and research papers. And my professor, like I said, I believe his ancestors probably were slaves. I mean, he came from Louisiana. He's around that, and he talked to us about the real reason of the Civil War. And a lot of people obviously they were fighting over slaves. Well, a lot of people don't realize that the North had a complete monopoly over the economy. And the true reason for the South seceding was because the North wouldn't allow them to build any factories over in the South. And all they had to do to fuel their economy was their farms and cotton plantations. So an alternative argument could be the North sort of was forcing the South to basically have slaves, as ridiculous as that sounds. And obviously there's another option, of course, but that was their only source of economy. And when they tried to get factories built, the North wouldn't allow them. So the true reason that they seceded was actually due to the economy and the taxes that the North was putting on them. They weren't making a dime compared to what the North was making. Now, it's important to note as well is that most Southern white families actually didn't own slaves during the time the South seceded. This is a fact. You can check it. However, unfortunately, the North was capitalizing off of the South having to use slaves to fuel their economy, and they wouldn't do anything about it. So it's not necessarily fair to say that the Confederates are, a bunch of slave-owning people, because the majority of the Confederates didn't actually own slaves.
Let me ask you this. And we're just speculating here, but let's assume that Confederates had won the Civil War and seceded and became their own nation. What do you think would have happened in regards to slavery?
I think that they would have for the economy, their economy would have been fueled, and they would have realized that they didn't need slaves anymore to fuel their economy, and they likely would have obviously ended slavery. Now, back to your point. Personally, the way that I feel about the Confederate flag, if I see it, it's kind of like makes me a little bit uncomfortable because I can see it from two different perspectives. About 50% of the people that wave the Confederate flag are stone cold racist losers. I don't disagree with that. But the other 50%, I truly believe that they're only waving the flag because they believe that it's a part of their American history. Now, to talk about your statue situation, I have to disagree with you in comparing, the bomb or the Boston bomber
Okay,
or
wait.
Osama bin
Let's
Laden and
break
saying, well,
up.
why don't
Wait,
we have
hang
a
on a second.
statue
I
of
don't
him?
want you to throw too much out there that I can't keep up with. Let's first go back to your comment that had the Civil War been won by the Confederates, they would have gotten rid of slavery soon after. Here's my take on it. There are several constitutions that these states were writing that had slavery written all over it. The second issue is, regardless of what would have happened with slavery, when you look at the amount of oppression and difficulties that those states, after losing the Civil War and being told blacks were free, the amount of oppression they continue putting on blacks, in my opinion, makes it clear they had nothing good in store for African Americans. So it's very difficult for any black person to look at those states and go,
I can understand that, but I do not believe.
You're breaking up. Go ahead.
I just don't believe that if the Confederates had won the war, that slavery would still. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just can't believe. I can't sit there and have the belief that if Confederates won the war, slavery would still be around. Number one, other countries would probably never allow it. They just wouldn't, and it would fall apart. Number two, the only reason that they still had slaves around were because their economy was failing, and the North wouldn't give them any factories, so that's the only way they could survive. Which is horrible to say, but it's the truth. It's historical truth. The majority of people in the South didn't actually own slaves during the time of the secedement.
Okay,
so
I
here's
get
my
that
take
they
on it.
didn't.
The North is responsible in a way. The North is responsible in a way for the South owning slaves because they wouldn't give them any opportunities to build their economy. Historically, I am correct. I'm not even taking a political argument here. Historically, I am actually on the
problem
I
have with it. Here's the problem I have with it. If I go to the club and some chick won't come home with me, so I decide to physically abuse another one in an alley, I don't blame the chick who didn't come home with me for the reason I'm acting like this. Nobody should be able to make me do that. You're either a good person or you're not. The fact that you have a poor economy should not lead to you oppressing and enslaving people. That's not an excuse for that. You're either morally correct. And by the way, they were all Christians, I would add. They were all reading from the Bible.
I agree with you in a sense. I agree with you in a sense, but you have to understand that we have evolved on a humanitarian standpoint as people, which is a good thing, which is great. I don't know if that's due to the Union winning or not. I don't. But what I will say is
we were evolved
no, I don't.
back then.
That's not true though, because the majority of people. You have to keep in mind though, this is the most historical importance of my argument.
You're going in and out.
The majority of people in the South, the majority of white people didn't own slaves during the time of separation. Okay, did you hear what I said?
Yeah, you're going in. I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. You're like delayed on my end. It's okay. It's fine. But the majority of people in the South didn't own slaves during the time of separation. That means that it was already a dying trend. It was almost a trend not to own slaves, which is a good thing, of course. But I guess that's where we'll have to disagree. Believe me, I agree, and I get your analogy. But is someone and destroying them economically, and of course when people are in when they're desperate, they do horrible things, and it's not right. I'm not defending owning slaves I'm just saying that that's what they were doing. That's what it is. Unfortunately that's what it is, and there's nothing we can do about it. But I would like but I get your point, but I would like to touch on the statue note.
You're breaking up so bad. Go ahead. I'll let you speak. I don't know, for some reason we're breaking up. We're not able to communicate. I'd like to hear from you, but can you hear me at all right now?
Should be better.
Okay, go ahead. Okay.
Here, let me request to speak again. 1 second.
Okay. I will.
In regards to his points on slavery, when you look at what happened after slavery, we're talking about sharecropping, right on into Jim Crow law. They had loitering and vagrancy laws. Even after being freed from slavery. Even after African Americans were freed from slavery, the southern states created additional pseudo ways, backdoor ways to still maintain slaves. So when he's suggesting that they would have gotten rid of slaves, it doesn't make sense based on what they actually did. They actually did continue doing things to keep people in bondage, meaning sharecropping, for instance. I mean, I don't get that. I'll go right on back to the box here. I don't
sense based on what actually happened. Okay.
Hey, what's up, Tim? Oh my God.
Good evening.
Let the history teacher in. Like, oh my God. I was dying.
Well, what do you think? I gotta ask you. I already know where you're at, but what do you think?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm a Texan. I'm like fourth generation Texan, and none of my family actually flies the Confederate flag. And I think, I make it very clear to people, being in the South is one thing, and I'm a proud Southerner, but no way would I ever fly that flag, because I've seen it. The Ku Klux Klan uses it. So, and they used to march down parades in my street. I mean, it's real clear what that flag's become. Yeah.
Let me say this. Yeah, I will say this in regards to that. If you are, I don't care if you decide to burn the American flag or take a knee during the anthem. I don't care if a veteran is 90 years old. They will get up there and try to stop you from desecrating their flag, or oftentimes speak out against folks taking a knee, even if the guy is 90 years old and disabled. The question I have is, if the Confederate flag represents pride and heritage and folks are honoring it because it's their heritage, as you pointed out, when the Klan adopted that flag, why don't they say anything about that? The Klan can walk down the street in the South and fly that flag, and not one Confederate supporter will step up and say, why the hell are you doing that to my pride and heritage? But when an athlete takes a knee, they're all over it. So that also has a lot to do with why we view that. Go ahead, Shay.
Well, and exactly right. So when I hear the argument, they don't want to out loud admit that they're racist, but every single Southerner knows what that flag means. Every single. It is not. And just like Fact said, you make me believe that they actually believe that, because they don't. Yeah. They don't actually believe it. They hide their racism through it. They're okay with it because we were taught by the Daughters of the Confederacy. We were taught that, right? In the South, in our textbooks, we were taught that the slaves were treated nicely. I mean, what else would they do?
They were insane.
Yeah. So you hear this kid sadly being taught by a Black professor, who obviously was taught by the Daughters of the Republic as well.
It might have been Candace Owens' great grandma.
I think so. The whole idea that the North wouldn't let them build factories. I don't see that. It was their competition. Could the North outdo them? Sure. There was, it's called competition, right? There wasn't they didn't let you. It's just that you starting from point zero to catch up with the steel mills was going to be hard. So it's not that they were prohibited from building steel mills. They just, it's like, I'm not going to go invent a Walmart. Why would I do that and back up to Walmart? I mean, that's kind of a silly approach. So no. And you made the point for me already about the whole idea. And I've heard that before in one of my lives, that slavery would have just ended. Right.
I hear that a lot. I hear that. You'd be amazed at how
they just would have let them go. Yeah, I hear that too. And that's another talking point that they have. Well, eventually, through technology, they would have been freed, and slavery just would have ended naturally. It didn't have to have a war.
I will say, I will say, I just want to say thank you for whoever just sent me that crane. But I say the same thing. You're making plenty of money off of completely free labor. Why would you ever give that up? I mean, it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if you succeed or not. If you're a farmer and literally 100% of your labor is free, I don't care what's happening. You're not going to give that up.
No, you're not going to give that up. And let's just be this very, very clear. You could have freed them and paid them a few dollars or whatever, but no, you chose to go to war instead.
Thank you, Zay.
Think about that. I mean, they could have freed them. They could have been sharecroppers. They could have made that decision instead of going to war, but no, they wanted the right to do what they wanted. They wanted to enslave them. And it was a whole system of racism built around it. So when slavery did end, as you already said, then there was the prison system. And yeehaw! You got to do the yeehaw.
I like those hat mustaches. These guys are pretty nice. I always love the hat mustaches.
I know, but yeah, I will say really this. Cool. But yeah.
In addition to the slavery part, they didn't want them reading, they didn't want them voting, they didn't want them working anywhere, holding professional positions or nothing. So I'm just clueless anytime somebody suggests. Thank you for that written on the. I didn't see the last part of your name, but I always find that odd that you really think that they were fighting for something that had they won, they would have stopped doing it, even though they were willing to go to war for it.
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense.
And then you've got to look at what happened after, and the resistance after, and the rise of the Ku Klux Klan, and the Jim Crow laws, and the Black Codes, and all of those things, the chain gangs. All of that was not letting go of that, keeping Black people in place, and keeping racism alive. So it's not true, and it's silly. And thank you for this. I loved your argument about the statues. I say that a lot as historians, because a lot of people ask me that. Don't you think that's, I said, no, I don't learn history through a statue in the middle of a park. You can go to the museums, you can read about in books. And I said the exact same thing. You go to Germany, there are no statues to the Nazis and Schnittler. And but we all know about him, and there's a ton of books written about him. So no. And we don't need to honor enslavers and traders. That's, statues are places of honor. That looks cute on you. It's
I saw that. I saw the hanging light too. You guys are really kind, and
y'all are so awesome.
Yeah, they're gonna make a Black man blush if that's even possible. But
I like it.
I think that, as you mentioned earlier in our conversation, the Sisters of the Confederate, they did a really good job in controlling the narrative. Thank you for that. They did it. And see, that's what happened, because when we defeated Germany, and the same thing with Japan, the victors got a chance to control the narrative so that they couldn't put out phony narratives. If you had to let Germany write its own history, the Holocaust would never have happened. Same thing in Japan, because we didn't finish with Japan the same way as Germany. They are teaching World War II history inaccurately. The way they teach history is that they were just behaving as normal, and America just suddenly started dropping bombs on them. A lot of the reason, Pearl Harbor and all that, it's not in their history book. So that's what happens when you let the ones committing the atrocities actually write history, such as what the Sisters of the Confederacy did. They're going to tell it from a biased perspective. They're not going to tell you the truth.
Absolutely not. And that's why they still don't want that narrative pushed. They still don't want it taught. This attack on CRT that's not being taught, they don't want it taught. They don't want to know that Billy Bob, Grandpa Billy Bob was, he's in that picture of the Klan meeting with a guy hanging from a tree. They don't want them discovering that or knowing what all that means. They just don't.
Here's my point also. When you think about the southern states, there's a hell of a lot of things in the South that are unique and good about the South. Whether you're talking about growing fruits, the weather, there's coastline in places. There's a hell of a lot more that you could honor from the South, other than a period of time, a flag that represents a period of time that was the worst in American history. I mean, how long? The Civil War only took place for a short period of time when you think about the entirety of American history. There has to be a better symbol to pick than that. They literally picked the most divisive symbol throughout American history. This is all you can come up with?
Well, exactly. Well, they did it for a reason, because even the Ku Klux Klan was built around the whole idea of keeping blacks in place, right? And to keep that racism alive. They did not want blacks, now that they're free. They didn't want them living in their, living near them and going to school with their kids. And, they wanted the separation. They were fine with them existing, but they wanted them to stay by themselves. And so they drove that narrative, and they picked that flag because they knew exactly what the Civil War was about.
Yeah,
They knew what that was. So,
and one of the things you don't often hear in regards to taking those statues down is when many of them were actually erected. Yep. Even though the Civil War happened in the 1800s, a lot of those statues were put in town square. When Martin Luther King and civil rights leaders would go to towns to fight against, riding on the back of the bus or not being able to form a union or not being able to vote, when they knew that the civil rights protesters were going to come into a town, they would put a Confederate statue in the middle of town square to let the protesters know we ain't about that shit we are about to bring here. So a lot of those statues went up. Yeah, a lot of them statues went up in the Jim Crow era, many decades, if not generations after the Civil War. They were put up as a message, not to honor the Confederate general or the soldier that's on them.
That's exactly right, Tim, and that's always been my argument. These weren't built right after 1865. They were built between the 1920s to 1950s to send a very clear message of what's going on. So
and I would tell anyone who talks about the statues being, pride and heritage, any statue that was put up in the 1900s, literally decades after the Civil War, you'd have to quit. Why did they decide to put that up now? I mean, you don't see them erecting World War I statues right now. I mean, what's up is up. Why are you putting this up 50 years later? I mean,
exactly. You got to be sending a message in some way. But good job on that, man. That was awesome. All right. Well, I'll let you move on, my friend. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Anytime. Let's do it again. Don't be a stranger. Don't be a stranger, Shay.
Absolutely not. Thanks for having me on. Take care,
Anytime.
sir.
All right. Okay. Going back to the box.
J.P. Parker's been holding. I didn't see big.
But I don't know if his connection went out, but why do people still fly a Confederate flag? I believe there's a message in it. That's coming from yours truly. I believe there's a message in it. You can honor your granddad or whoever you want to honor in other ways. I believe there's a message to it. Some of them, maybe, I don't know. Ignorance to piss off African Americans. There's a host of reasons. JP, why do you think that flag is still flying in many places? With strange and beautiful wildlife. J.P. Parker, are you rolling with me? Okay, unfortunately, J.P.
not there, so we're going to move the program on. Fast Pass, frequent viewer, friend of the program as well. Let's go to Fast Pass. Why is that flag flying? And I don't know what the hell's going on with my box here. For some reason it's bringing folks on.
Try this one more time. Modern Colonizer, can you hear me on this?
Yes, sir. How are you?
Okay, I'm doing good. Why is that flag still flying? You been listening?
Yeah, off and on for about a half hour. I was driving home, and that's why I got reset. Appreciate you picking me up. I would say, for me, I mean, that's a weird random number. I would say 80% of the people who fly it, it's like some closet racist, and it's like, bro, if you're racist, just say you're racist, and we won't invite you to the barbecue. Like,
they don't want to lose their jobs, and they don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want to hurt it's detrimental to your entire family. If you come on and say you're a racist, anybody that's hanging around you are going to be viewed as birds of a feather flock together. I mean, it's like hanging out with Jose Maxwell. You must be a pedo also. So they don't want to tell the truth because it comes with a lot of negative connotations.
Right. I see what you're saying at that point, but then why fly a flag? That you're making a bold statement, whatever fly, But I would say, again, a weird number, but like 20%, they do fall under that. We don't want to be oppressed by the bigger kid on the block, and you heard me say this. In fact, I have to take a little credit because I didn't hear you start repeating it. till I said it. But every time I heard state rights, it was usually to oppress someone's rights, not give them to them. You know,
that is true.
Right?
That is true.
But that
yes.
all being said, and it's the first time I heard anybody say, "Oh, the North won't let them build factories and crap like that," right? But there is a little bit to be said about, we live here and they live there and they're coming here, right? So I mean, because you've seen brothers wear Confederate flags on their biker jackets. You know what I'm saying? Like and those would be the people I think fall in that category, along with their white brothers right next to them. Of just
let me respond to that. Let me respond to that. When I was younger, I used to have the Dukes of Hazzard car and all that with the Confederate flag on top. I think, and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong or tell me where to go with this, but I believe that a lot of African Americans were flying the flag out of ignorance. Remember, most of our history, certainly if you grew up in my era in the 70s and 80s, or God forbid anybody who grew up before me, you weren't learning history from black people. We weren't. None of my history books in school were written by black authors. They were all. So you were right. You were reading history coming from white people, and there is no denying. I'm not here to bash whites by any means. Most of my audience is white, but there's no denying that white people in America did not teach history accurately. So a lot of folks are flying the Confederate flag on the African American side because they're ignorant to what it truly meant back in those days. They've bought a lot of the Sisters of the Confederacy, a lot of the things that they've said. Folks have bought that. I mean, we all grew up believing Christopher Columbus discovered America. That's just not true. So when you see African Americans with the Confederate flag on, yeah, it's because they probably don't really know what the whole situation is about. It's only been in recent times, in our lifetime, by the way, where a lot more of the truth has gotten out. But if you grew up in the 70s and 80s and anything before that, we weren't teaching history. We were teaching American exceptionalism.
Yeah, fair enough. I didn't think about it that way. I mean, I've obviously thought of those things, but I didn't think of it when I see a black guy wearing a Confederate flag from perspective. And what I will say is, like, that's why if I ever had kids, I'll never teach them about Santa, this, that, and the other. Like, everything I learned as a kid was like, damn, that was sugar coated. Whether it was the from the Pilgrims to, because hey, the thing was it Squanto, right? Like, talk about taking a grain of truth and making it sound like we all just sat at a table and we're cool. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then, or like Sunday school, right? Like, oh, Moses parted the Red Seas and he saved his people. It's like, okay, Moses is a wonderful guy. And then you get to be an adult and you're like, oh shit, now I know why Moses was trying to run the fuck up out of there, because they didn't tell me that part of what Moses did, And it's like, why do we do that,
Yeah.
But
it's almost like teaching grown people that Santa Claus is real. I mean, our history has been washed. I mean, when you really look at the way our history portrays how the English came here and settled on this land, it was done in the most peaceful of ways imaginable. But in reality, what actually happened with the Native Americans and the smallpox epidemic and bringing over slaves and all, it's horrible. But when you listen to it the way it was taught in the history books, it's like the natives just came over here, the Indians invited them over, they had a nice meal, as you mentioned, and they just slowly but surely somehow took over the entire country peacefully, and the natives just kind of disappeared off into little reservations, all peacefully.
Not to keep on going off track, but the English actually believed that the so-called inferior people wanted their leadership and to show them how to work and be more productive in their work. You know what I mean? The English.
How could you possibly believe that when every tribe is fighting back?
No, I'm saying in their own naive, weird brains, they thought people wanted to be colonized and be, it's a weird mindset,
Yeah, it is very weird. I'd have a hard time believing that. I believe that there were more intelligent or more misleading English, kind of like in a lot of churches, particularly some of the more Mormon-like churches where you got a very savvy, conniving pastor or something, and he's got people, his parishioners are not as smart, and they're just buying anything he's selling. And I think that you had English that were like that to the masses, and convincing folks that these people want to be colonized, they want their freedoms to be stripped from them. Yeah. And anybody who would be willing to buy that would have to be the most ignorant among us. But there's always people like that.
Well, I'm just saying that's how superior they thought they were. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But back to the Confederate flag issue. What I think the hill I'll die on is that there may be a small percentage of people who fly it in a we just don't want to be oppressed by the big brother that's going to come in and kick our butt. But that gets so superseded by all the negative connotations of that flag, right? And so, when's the last time we ever put a statue up for the loser? And
right
at the end of the day, regardless if there was some good elements of the South or some whatever you want to call it, right? Like when you were asking that guy how long would slavery have gone on for, it's like there's no answer other than I don't know. Probably would go on for a long, long time.
It would have went on. It would have went on until blacks and some white sympathizers fought to have it ended. Nobody's going to give away free labor and just do that on their own. So any notion that they would have just woke up and been like, "Yay, we're our own nation now. Let's end slavery." Hell no. They're making a fortune off of free labor. They're not going to give that up until those people rise up and fight against them. So it would not have ended without a fight.
Yeah, so to me, like in Germany, I don't know what the punishment is, but I know it's not just getting scolded. I think it's an actual criminal punishment. You will go to jail for flying the swastika.
Yeah.
I mean, they take it serious over there. Is that the level we would need to go? I don't know, man. I'm not the guy to ask for that. But I do find it ironic that we try to make a difference between the Nazis and the Confederates.
What you hanging out? I don't want to interrupt you. Are you hanging out with Michael Vick over there? You got some dogs fighting in the background, man.
Yeah, y'all can hear it. I'm in the garage. Hold on. Hey, shut the fuck up.
Sound like you hanging out with Michael Vick's dog training school over there.
Hey, I'm sure my neighbors are probably thinking of calling animal control on me. I got an 8-year-old pit bull. She's on 3 legs, right? And then I got about a 4 or 5 month old Australian Shepherd who, he doesn't know when to quit. And so she gets tired of his shit and they go at it pretty good,
Oh, damn. Yeah. Hopefully they're going to be still alive by the end of our conversation, man. So you got some serious shit going on over there. Hey, listen, I'm moving on, though. You know how I always like to do it, man.
Yeah. But real quick, if you don't mind, we got a couple. My timer's out, but your show, of course. I don't know if we have spoken since the last time that we spoke, and you had not yet seen the Biden speech. Did we talk between then and now?
I don't know, but I certainly had a show. I think 2 or 3 shows devoted to that. What did you think of it? I think we did talk though, but what did you think of it?
We may have. So if you don't mind rehashing it, you've asked many times, is Trump the most divisive president?
Yes.
And I had asked, but you hadn't seen the speech as of the time asking. How divisive do you think that was? Do you think he was truly driving home the point that he's only targeting a few percent of the extremist MAGA, or do you think it could be read by both sides as pretty much any Republican is who I'm speaking of?
No, I don't believe anybody watching that speech would think that he was targeting Liz Cheney or Mitt Romney. I just being honest with you. And the reason I say that is because the reason Joe Biden was elected was because he was elected to deliver unity. Now we can certainly make the point that unity he has not delivered on that promise. However, he was brought in to deliver unity because Biden has a history throughout his many decades in Congress and the Senate of working with Republicans. A lot of them know him. Even Lindsey Graham and some of those folks, before they became strong MAGA supporters, used to work with President Biden. So that's why we believed he could bring unity, because here's a guy who used to work with people. Trump wasn't working with anyone. Now, in regards to what you're suggesting, targeting all Republicans, no. I believe that Biden has a lot of Republicans' personal phone numbers. He's hung out with them and things like that. He is that. When you guys talk about you should have term limits because neither one of them have your side and in your best interest, and they all eat dinner and lunch together and shit. He's one of those kind of people. He has a lot of Republican friends. So no, he's not targeting all Republicans.
Right. I just think, maybe people on that level, the high political level, would be able to differentiate, but the standard viewer who likes to vote based off 10-second sound bites, what they heard is going to be different. And just to me, I guess when you add up, this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Basically, hate your neighbor. They're causing your problems. They're the one who makes your life suck. And it goes on the same rhetoric of blame your problems on these people. And the funny mustached guy, he was pretty good at rallying an entire country of saying, blame all your problems on these people. And that's just kind of where my attack on Biden is with that.
Did you see Trump doing any of that stuff?
A good amount, I guess. Yeah. I won't say.
Okay. All right. All right, fair enough. I mean, when you start talking about Mexico sending rapists and murderers, you're blaming a lot of problems on a group of people. I get your point. I don't think Biden, all of his speeches, certainly the ones you're bringing up, yeah, they were very divisive. I don't think all of his speeches have been unifying. However, I will say this: if Biden makes any attempt to unify MAGA, it will be done in vain. Most MAGA don't even think the guy knows where the hell he's at. He's not going to be able to reach across the aisle and get any MAGA support no matter what he does. He could walk over and hand MAGA members, folks who support Trump, he could hand them $100 bill and they would take his money and say he was dumb enough with dementia to give it to him. So I don't even know if there's any purpose in trying to be, unifying with MAGA. They're not going to like him no matter what.
Yeah, I never claimed that there would be any unification, but there definitely, doesn't need to be the added division, like we're not already divided enough, Well,
but he went out of his way. If you listen to that speech, and I listened to it a number of times, he went out of his way to make sure Republicans knew. Every time he said Republicans, it was preceded by MAGA. He made sure they knew, I am not talking about the typical traditional Republican. He literally opened the speech up that way. I don't have the clips right now, but I was playing it on one of my previous shows the day after that speech. But he made it clear, I'm not talking about traditional Republicans. I'm talking about MAGA.
Right, fair enough. Well, hey, I'll call it the last word. I'll retort to this guy's comment. Then
Sure.
Talk to your Lord and Savior. My Lord and Savior is Heckler and Koch. So, I don't have a price here. So, hey,
all right.
Have me on. Good talking to you. Have a great night, man.
Shout out to the Pew Pew. Catch you later, Modern Congress.
Appreciate that, cap and gown. Much love to you. Patriot equals a dude in an Under Armour t-shirt with an American flag on it. I would hope that there is more required to be a patriot than just the apparel you're wearing. Thank you. All right, looking in the comments. What about the rallying speech in Pennsylvania? Defend 3747. Listen, I think we're well beyond the point of countering any conversation about divisiveness or unity with a Trump speech. Trump is expected to be divisive, period. No one expects Trump to be unifying. I mean, it's literally his spiel. It's his MO is to be divisive. So you bringing up the fact that Trump is divisive is like bringing up the beach has sand. It's kind of what you really expect. It's a little bit more shocking when Biden gives a speech like that because you expect better of Biden in terms of unity. You don't expect that from Trump. You don't expect him to be unified. You expect him to be divisive. And even a lot of MAGA folks come on the show all the time. And if it's one thing they'll admit, Trump did not care a lot about unity. It wasn't even, you either down with what I'm doing or we move on without you. Get on the Trump train or get ran over. Let's go to Miss Goddess. Frequent view
of the program. Good evening, Miss Goddess.
Hey, Mr. Harrison. Look, I gotta get this. Wait, listen, I gotta get this off of my chest. Hello. Let me say it for like this. Hello, Mr. Handsome. My Hershey Kisses. My Hershey Bar. My Almond Joy.
Okay.
Yeah.
You when you say that, when you often say that, I don't know if you remember the old Steve Harvey show. I think it was Steve. There used to be, or was it Monique? I don't know. It's one of those shows that used to
Oh,
have somebody who
Monique.
sounded just like that.
Miss Parker.
Yeah, yeah. It sounded. You remind me of that old TV show. I'd have to look that up to verify where did that come from. It was probably was the Parkers, but you remind me of that.
Okay.
It's a pleasure. I take it as a compliment. I always appreciate
I
having you
said
on. What's on your
Hershey
mind this evening?
Kisses. I said Hershey chocolate bar. Dang it. And
Okay.
my
All right. You got
Almond
me.
Joy.
You got me blushing like a motherfucker. All right. What's on your mind this evening? You make me wish I was on radio. All right.
How
Go ahead. Go
how you
ahead. Let's
doing?
get real.
How you doing
I'm doing
today?
good. I'm doing good.
Okay, let's talk about this Confederate flag, right?
Sure.
Well, it goes way back. It goes way back. And it is a representation of racism. It
How
is,
so?
huh?
How so? Give me your. You say it represents racism. How so? In what way?
Anytime the Klansmen gonna walk around and carry them goddamn bad flag, that flag represents a lot of blood, sweat,
Yeah, but the
tears.
Klan did not adopt a flag until years later. What about folks who say that I don't have nothing to do with the Klan? The Klan was wrong for adopting our flag. This is about pride and heritage, and I'm not a Klan member. How do you respond to them?
Well, they ain't a Klan member, but they just like your other host came in here and said that they still racist. They're still racist. Now they're white people and they even admitted it. It represents racism.
Yeah. And I agree with K Black in the comments who says they don't say it loud enough. That is probably true. I would agree
Yeah,
with that as that. Yeah, you
it's
could do a
racism.
much better job. Yeah, if for folks who defend those statues, you see what happened in Charlottesville with the amount of passion they had in defending that statue in Charlottesville. If
Yeah,
they had that same sort of passion in defending their flag against the Klan, it would make more sense.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But we don't see that. Um, yeah, if let's say you're driving down the highway or on the street and you see a guy go past you with a pickup truck with a flagpole with a Confederate flag, what type of judgments would you make just seeing that?
It make me sick to my stomach because
Mm,
up north we don't see that very much. But whenever you do see it, like you gotta like your head look like the essences when it turn all the way around.
yeah.
Like what the
What
heck?
state are you in, by the way, if you will? What state are you in?
I'm not gonna say in particular, but I'm like I'm
East
like
Coast?
yep, near
Okay.
Philadelphia.
All right. Okay. All right. All right. Fair enough.
And
Yeah,
we don't get to see.
you're not gonna see too many Confederate flags that far up on the East Coast, but I have seen them in the Midwest,
Well,
Ohio,
yeah,
Illinois,
yeah,
Indiana. I've seen
yeah,
them. Yeah, I've seen them.
yeah. New Jersey too sometimes, Delaware, but not very much. But the KKK did try to go through Philadelphia. Time going fast was 2 years ago. Maybe it was last year. They ran them out of there. They ran.
Yeah. Well, yeah, certainly when you get up in the northern states where there never really was a strong Klan presence to begin with, and African Americans gained freedom a lot sooner in the northern states. So
Yeah, I'll say that.
and the Caucasian citizens up there were, I mean, there was plenty of oppression even in the northern states, but it was nothing like down south. So yeah, the
It
Klan
was different
operating
for
up north
us.
is going to go ahead, say that
Yeah.
again.
Okay, I'm gonna say this to say this, right? Okay,
Sure.
all right. It was like the undertone, like, all right, we never experienced near what they did down south, maybe other places or whatever. We just knew not to go. Now, it was mainly South Philly was like the Italians, and they did not like us for their reason, and they did not want for us to go. Plus, they had the mob and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm gonna say about the 80s, they start breaking it up in Philadelphia, and then them little young boys start coming through. They chased them on out of there. So, but it was like respectfully, you know what I'm saying? Like you have to go back and forth to work, but like we just stood in our lane, they stood in their lane. It was just like a respect type thing. We knew they ain't want us there, so we ain't trying to go there. We just try to just keep the peace. So, but it wasn't too like separate water fountains and can't go grocery stores and stuff like that. Like I've never seen none of that type of things up north. I
haven't seen it. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. I'm assuming by then it was a lot of that was over with, at least in terms of systemic. I mean, there was obviously still racism in the 70s and 80s, but it wasn't by law.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like, okay, now when you go down south, they let you know. They don't like you, like down south. Like they literally will let you know in body language, how they look at you, how they talk to you, and that they don't like you. To whereas up north, it's just a little bit. I guess it's just a little bit more tolerable.
That's not everywhere down south. You'd agree, right?
Not everywhere, but just like South Carolina and North Carolina. Oh yeah, they let you kind of know that they don't want to be bothered.
I mean, if you get out and, Charlotte, North Carolina is a pretty big urban city. You think there's a lot of that going on?
It changed though.
Okay.
It changed. Right. It's building up and is more diverse. Yeah. I'm talking about a long time ago.
Okay, I do see folks in the audience saying she is right. I have, when I was an over the road driver, I was in all of these cities. I've been in rural Mississippi, rural Alabama. I mean, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia. I've been in all these areas. I don't know if I encountered it as much, and I've been in some mom and pop restaurants in the middle of nowhere to get some barbecue or things like that. Hell, I might have been eating saliva for all I know.
You just don't pay no mind. He was just hungry passing through.
I didn't see it. I'll just say I didn't see a lot of it. I did have a couple of times when I would go, because I was an expediter. I was driving a van and picking up freight. And I would see a couple of times when I would walk in the warehouse. Sometimes you get there first thing in the morning or late in the evening, and you walk in the warehouse and you're waiting to find the shipper, and there's nobody there. Everybody's went home for the day. And all of a sudden, somebody see you walking around the office, and I've seen folks act like you ever detected when you rub somebody the wrong way, even though you've done nothing. I've had that happen, where I can tell this person has an issue with me, even though I've done nothing wrong. This person has an issue with me. That's about the most I've had happen.
Yeah, but another thing that's still prevalent right now today, sundown towns. It's plenty of sundown towns.
Explain that for members of the audience that may not be aware of what that means.
Okay, so I'm not too far from Elton, Maryland, right? And it's called Sunrise, Maryland. We don't want to go there after dark. Even truck drivers don't want to go there after dark because you at your own risk of losing your life. You just respectfully, when you know that sun go down, do not go in them sundown towns.
What if you're in the sundown town, you run into trouble and you dial 911 for help? Gotta ask. I gotta ask. I gotta ask.
Just don't be. I mean, like you already, like the truck drivers, they already know that load is going to be completed before that sun go down. You don't want to be in those sundown towns. That's all your clansism, all your racism, all the everything. You don't want to be in there. It's like one way in, one way out. Like, yeah. And it still exists in a lot of places. And the sad thing about it is that they're not really talked about enough.
No, they're not. You don't hear anything about somebody meeting an untimely demise in a sundown town. No, they're not talked about at all. I haven't even seen any like news exposés or anything recently on sundown towns. I didn't encounter those, so I can't speak on them. I can't say that that I can verify they are there or not because I've been through some pretty rural ass southern towns and I didn't have anything happen to me. But that's not to say it doesn't exist. It just did not happen to me.
Read your comments.
Yeah, I see
people
them.
agreeing to
I
them
see people
sundown
naming actual
towns.
cities. Yeah, I'm seeing people naming actual towns.
Yes.
I haven't seen. Somebody said Oprah did a show. I haven't seen them though.
And Georgia have quite a bit too. Georgia have Georgia have a sundown town so many miles away from Atlanta. That's how close it is.
Yeah.
And like they be out there putting the KKK like pamphlets and notices. Don't know who doors they putting it in. They put it in, not all white folk doors. It's just crazy. Can we just all get along? Why can't we just all get along?
Yeah. Last guy that said that got his ass whooped by a bunch of police officers in L.A. Listen, Miss Parker. I mean, Miss Goddess.
You playing that?
I got him moving on, Miss Goddess.
Okay, I'm gonna make you blush again. Good night, my Hershey Kisses, my Hershey bar, my I'm Joy.
Oh my Lord, girl, you landed on picking and skipping peanut butter. All right, catch you later.
My pleasure.
Absolutely, mine too. Good talk. Good talk. That's a sundown town. Respect each other, otherwise man will destroy man. Well, what can you do in regards to respecting someone when they don't respect you? Kind of reminds me of the old movie Karate Kid Part 2 where Daniel's son in the movie tells the bad guy, listen, I'm not looking for any trouble. And the bad guy responds and says, there may be trouble looking for you. Sometimes there's no way out of it. Sometimes there's no way out of it, folks. No matter what you do, if a person means you harm or means you trouble, there may not be any way out of it. Carry concealed, says JMSX. Yeah, but if you carry concealed in a sundown town and you have to take someone's life and the whole town is against you, you can be guaranteed that witnesses are going to be, they're going to end up testifying against you and you're going to probably be accused of murder. That's just the way it is. It's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. I get that, but it still may not go your way. Looking in the comments. Jasper, Texas. I've never been to these places. All right, let me go back to the box. We're going to go straight to the right libertarian guy. My box was acting kind of funny. Right libertarian guy. I think we've talked before, correct?
Yeah, we've talked before.
Good evening. You been listening to the program, sir?
Yes, I have. And
all right, what's on your mind? See, Confederate flag? You think do you think there's any racism to that, or is that just a measure of honoring pride and heritage?
So I don't care for one way or the other. I think people on both sides put too much meaning behind it. I think there's a good portion of it that has to do with racism and the triple K. I'm not sure if we can say that on TikTok. I know TikTok is kind of dumb, but I'm sure a good portion of it has to do with that. But I think in modern times, what it really is kind of a rebellion thing and I think it's more so being like anti-culture. I do think that the people that do use it in that form, uh, if that is why they use it, have a responsibility to separate it from the common conception of it being used for racism and by the triple Ks. So I think if that is what is behind it.
That's a question I would have to ask you in regards to folks who are suggesting it's about pride and heritage and it doesn't have anything to do with hate. Take out the minority opinion of the flag. I would have to ask, why do so many hate groups seem to think it has something to do with hate. It's not just a triple K. Most white supremacist groups are flying that flag. Why is that? Why do the racists seem to think that that flag represents racism?
I first off, to be a racist, I feel like you have to have not such a good IQ level.
Okay.
So, I don't think we can really accuse them of being the brightest people. But I think because certain hate groups have used it, they use it as a hate symbol. And also, going back to what I was saying, as it being anti-culture, they may think that them using anti-culture for the wrong reasons is what it's symbolizing. My whole thing is, if you are just using it as anti-culture, not with that racist undertone to it, I think that the people that do use it as that you know anti-establishment, anti-culture type thing, they need to do a better job at separating it from what has been the conception of it.
Yeah, I would contend that like the other guy said, at least he suggested maybe as many as 80% are racist. I would say this: you're either racist at worst or insensitive at best. There is no one in 2022 that does not understand that a large portion of the country believes that that flag represents racism. So even if you're not racist and you're flying that flag, at the very least, you are insensitive as hell. It would be like literally, flying driving around with a picture of Ghislaine, what is it, Ghislaine Maxwell, the woman who was, literally a pimp to a pedophile. I mean, you know what this person represents. So even if you don't think the Confederate flag represents racism, at the very least, you'd have to be viewed as insensitive as hell. There has to be another way to allude to being a rebellious individual other than just that flag. That is not the only way to show that you are for rebellion or you are against the establishment. That cannot be the only way to do that.
Like I said, I don't care for it one way or the other. I'm from the South. I'm from Florida, and anybody that I've ever seen sport it, they do it not as a racial thing. It's more of like a country thing, which I think, again, my point still stands. There needs to be a more vocal public separation between using it, as a symbol of rebellion or, Southern pride, and separating it from what it used to be. But that's not really the main reason I wanted to get in here and speak with you. I wanted to speak on something that you said earlier, and I vehemently disagree, and I attest the premise that they're growing up, there weren't any good black superheroes. As a superhero fan, I detest the premise of that. You got John Stewart, you got Static Shock, you got Jefferson Pierce, Black Lightning. There's numerous different.
Yeah, but wait a minute. You're talking about people that, unless you were a deep comic book reader, you've never heard of. How many movies were attributed to Black Lightning? I didn't hear about that guy till he had a show on, was it CW Network or something like that, just a few years, maybe 10 years or so ago. I mean, coming up in the 70s.
He had numerous appearances in the Justice League cartoons, and John Stewart, the Green Lantern, he was a core character of the Justice League, and Static Shock had a huge following in the TV show as well.
I had as a child, I don't remember hearing of not a single one of those people you just named, not one of them.
Really?
No, not one of them.
Wow. I mean, yeah, it could just be because, I grew up on comic books and superhero stuff.
Yeah. If you had access to comic books, because a lot of movies like Iron Man, when I was a kid, I didn't know who Iron Man was, but now they've taken a lot of superheroes from comic books and made, blockbuster movies from them. But yeah, out of all of those black superheroes you're naming as a child, I don't remember seeing any of them in cartoons. They didn't have any movies, any feature length movies based on. It was Superman. I remember Batman in the 80s. Obviously, Spider-Man has a whole host of movies from, but yeah, I don't remember any black superhero. I think Robert Townsend did some goofy shit like Blank Man and some of that stuff, but even that was not until the 90s. But in the 70s and 80s, a black superhero? I don't know any. Shaft? I guess you would say Richard Roundtree and Shaft, maybe. That's about it.
I'm a little bit younger. I grew up in the 90s, and of course, I was more enshrined in the comic book world. So that could definitely have something to play into it. But I remember, growing up as a kid watching, Static Shock and, going outside in New Jersey and standing on a metal trash can lid pretending I was Static Shock. And I grew up wanting to be like him. And, at the time, like, he was a black character, but, like, I never really saw that. I was just like, yeah, this dude's freaking awesome.
Yeah. But you do get my point though, that if you were, and I see folks in there correcting me that Robert Townsend was he Meteor Man, and I think it was Damon Wayans. He was Blank Man. I get
Damon
that.
Williams.
Yeah, but both of those were 1990s movies, though. I was already an adult in the 90s, but I'm talking about as a child in the 70s and 80s. If you were watching cartoons in the 70s and 80s, I mean, I remember reruns of Popeye, Woody Woodpecker, Tom and Jerry. Later on, it was He-Man, Jason and Will Warriors, Transformers, GoBots. I don't remember many African Americans to look up to. I just don't. I'm thinking like throughout, and I watched a lot of cartoons coming up. I don't remember hardly any. I think there was some guys on GI Joe. I think there was a couple black guys in that, but even that was Destro and Duke, who played the lead characters in that. But I don't. I think Mr. T had a cartoon. I Pity the Fool. That's about it.
Yeah, I remember watching that growing up. Yeah, again, I grew up in the 90s, so it might be a little bit different. And but even as far back as the 60s, there were those old Justice League shows with Jon Stewart's Green Lantern, and I just think that the good ones need to have a obviously more like not representation, because that term is way overused, but more of a light shined onto them. I think what does like especially in the superhero realm, what does black superheroes a real disservice is similar to what they did with like Batwoman, where the writing takes such a bad hit that they make the entire personality just that they're a black superhero. When I think they did like Black Lightning on the CW, I think they did a much better job at that, because you got to see him as a father, as a husband, as a superhero, as a friend, and stuff like that. So I think that's the type of route they need to go in telling this story as well.
Yeah, there's a lot more for children of today. I mean, like you mentioned, Black Lightning, there's Spawn, and there's a host of stuff now. And then obviously on television, there's plenty of shows all over cable that portray blacks as wealthy or blacks as, music moguls or whatever. I mean, but when we were coming up as children, the only thing really positive you've seen of African Americans were in music or in athletics, which is why to this day, that's what most blacks aspire to be, is a musician or an athlete. Because that's when we were I mean, you're starting to see, more folks getting into the arts and I find
that weird. I find that weird because to this date, my favorite, I guess you can call him a black pop culture icon, is Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Oh, the astrologer, the astronomy guy.
Yeah. I couldn't
but
care
he
less
also
about
he also is a rarity. He's a rarity indeed.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think Like I could care less about the rappers and the music moguls and the football players and the basketball players, even though Michael Jordan is the GOAT, and anybody that says otherwise is completely
Yeah,
wrong.
they're the ones they're the ones that's making all the money. Believe it or not, particularly with rap music, since that is a complete invention by black people. And it is the number one genre of music across the board, including country, pop, all of that. Rap music is responsible for more black millionaires than anything else. I'm talking academics, athletics, entertainment. Nothing is responsible for more black millionaires than rap music. And it's because it is a 100% complete invention by black people. So, as bad as it is, as horrible as the messages of it is, it's putting a hell of a lot of money in the hands of some black people. Certainly now, where they are controlling their own royalties and controlling their own, producing their own music and things like that, you're starting to have rap billionaires. I mean, there's a lot of rappers that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars at this point.
Oh yeah, and to be honest, a lot of that doesn't even come from the music industry. If you actually looked at how much these, rappers are making off of their record deals, they're making almost dirt shit to uh they have to, go down different avenues. Like you can take a look at like Jay-Z. He started, different, clothing brands and uh Ciroc, and I think that Jay-Z was Ciroc. Because I know Jay-Z
Yeah,
and
well,
Diddy both
yeah,
have
but
a
they're using their. I agree that they're branching off into other businesses, but
yeah.
but the rap music was what got
No,
them
no,
their
no, yeah.
15 minutes of fame.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm
Yeah,
actually in favor of more musicians going the independent route because they're getting completely shafted by the
yeah,
music industry.
yeah, yeah. Without Puff Daddy, there is no Ciroc or no Sean John clothing line. Without
Yeah.
Kanye West, the rapper, there are no Yeezy shoes. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
yeah, he
100%.
was a yeah, they spawned off into these very successful businesses, but make no mistake about it, it's
Yeah.
because of their rap careers.
Oh yeah, I wasn't taken away from that at all.
Okay. All right.
We just got into talking about the music industry, and I hate the way the music industry treats its talent. And that's
Yeah.
why I'm a huge proponent of going independent, like Hobson or
Yeah.
Mortal Technique, Tech Nine. They went more independent, and I think it gives them more of a handle on their own empire rather than working for another man's legacy.
Right. And I see, like, for instance, in the comments, I see, what does it say? No fucks given. I love the names. No fucks given. He's saying, yeah, well, Yeezy shoes look ridiculous. Now that's a joke.
They
You can call the
they
guy
do
a
look
joke all you
ridiculous.
want, but the guy got more money than Bruce Willis. I mean,
Yeah.
Kanye West is worth $2 billion. Say whatever you want about his money. I mean, the guy is in his mid 40s and he's worth $2 billion. So they
Hey,
may look
I'll
ridiculous
put
to
it this
you.
way. I'll put it this way. Whether you like Kanye's opinions, his politics, his shoes, uh, that man can afford to not give a fuck if it was financed.
Yeah. He didn't look stupid when he was endorsing Trump. I gotta go though, man. I
Yeah, I
gotta move
appreciate
it
you
on.
having me on.
Absolutely.
And
Go ahead.
remember, Jordan, he's the GOAT.
I don't think anyone argues with that. Catch you later.
If they do, they're wrong.
Yeah, I don't think
with Jordan being the GOAT just simply because of what he did for the sport. There's obviously other good players, but what he did for the sport, yeah, he definitely is the GOAT. Dentrell, B, Art, Mural. Well, even something Ben was in there. Okay, Ben. Okay, let me go to Dentrell. All right.
pow wow pow now. Right? Good comment. Okay. Good evening, Dentrell.
What's going on, man?
Is that a symbol of pride and heritage behind me?
No, it's not. It's a symbol. It was first the flag of the North Virginia Regiment, but it came to be the most famous flag of the Civil War because General Lee was from that regiment, and General Lee was leading the army. So therefore, it represents the South. Now, if I can educate you for a second, in 1861, right before the attack on Fort Sumter, the vice president of the Confederacy, Alexander Stephens, gave what is known as the Cornerstone Address, where he laid out the purpose of the Confederacy. And I'm just
okay.
and I'm gonna read this short paragraph. It's not even a paragraph. It says, "Our new government, its foundations are laid, and its cornerstone rests on the great truth that the N word is not equal to the W man, and that slavery and subordination to the superior race is his natural and normal condition. This, our new government, is the first in history of the world based on that great physical and physiological and moral truth." There's no question left there.
What are you reading? What is that?
That's called the Cornerstone Address by Alexander Stephens. It was given in Savannah, Georgia, at the Athenaeum, and this was their convention as they were gathering up everything and founding the Confederacy. People look over it because you would have to take a
Because
college
it's
level. Yeah,
because it's brutally honest.
yeah, and you would have to take a college level history course to learn about it. And see that the whole thing is people get lost in the sauce because they're uneducated, and what they do is they read things that confirm what they want to believe. You see what I'm saying?
I agree with that. I do believe that folks want to view this in a certain manner, and they refuse to entertain anything that sways from that narrative.
But here's something that you can use, and I've used it before. Okay, so as a educated man, I can also say that most all abolitionists in that time period were represented either by the Republican Party or they were near to the Republican Party. So there was Republican abolitionists, okay,
Right.
and the South were Dixiecrats, okay, which were Democrats, right?
Right.
Now I stood in front of a bunch of Republicans and I asked them as they defended the Confederate flag, why are you waving the flag of Democrats?
I like how you phrased that. Obviously, they don't want to admit the switch took place, but I like how you phrased that, which kind of leads to no other way out other than something
Yeah,
clearly
every
happened
time I
because
ask that question, I get silence. And believe me, and you may not know this about me. I have a stake in this because I don't know if I've told you before, but I am one of the artists who created the Juneteenth National Monument last year in Galveston, and I've been in
oh,
New York Times, CBS Evening News, and everything else like that. It's
wow.
on my page. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because there's a move in Florida by Republicans to strike down a Juneteenth holiday, saying it's wokeism. And this is what I said.
Oh my God.
Juneteenth, hold on, Juneteenth represents a time when Republican abolitionists joined with blacks to fight for the freedom of Texas. And so when they arrived in Texas, Gordon Granger read the orders and sent out what a lot of people didn't know of, a mixed regiment of black and white soldiers to free the slaves in 1865, which was 2 years after 1863. But here
Right.
we are in current times with Republicans fighting to strike down a Republican holiday.
Well, I will say this, and I say this all the time for folks who suggest that, Biden is racist and intolerant and say Trump or the Republicans are for minorities. Stuff like what you're talking about there. If you find yourself thinking that, liberals are crazy or they're just, blacks are crazy or they're just following, the falsehoods of the media and wrongfully thinking the Republican Party is racist, stuff like what you're talking about right there, trying to cancel the Juneteenth holiday. It's stuff like that that gets you branded that way. Whether you're racist or not, when you got stuff like that spewing from your party, that's about as anti-black as it gets. We don't have a lot of black holidays. Martin Luther King, which is lightly observed depending on where you go, and you get a Juneteenth in a year after it's put into existence. What is this? The second year, I think it is. You're already trying to take it apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any Republican that is confident that the Republican Party is not racist and being wrongfully treated should be up in arms and outrage about that. Should be speaking out publicly that what they're doing in Georgia, it literally goes against your cause. If you want to convince African Americans and minorities that you are not a racist party, you should be totally against that. That it's one fucking day. It's one day. It's a holiday. Chill and have barbecue with your family as well. You don't have to be black to enjoy Juneteenth. Take the damn day off work. You really want to go back to work just because it's a day for black people? That right there is horrible. I hadn't heard of that, but that is horrible.
Well, to expound on it, all you have to do, and this is so I won't hog your whole time, is Google the Absolute Equality mural in Galveston, Texas, and you will see a 5,000 square foot mural dedicated to the premise that people of all races joining together to do what's right. Okay.
What did you say? What did you say it's called again?
Absolute Equality mural by Reginald Adams and the creatives, and I'm one of the creators. I'm Dantrell Boone.
Wow, that had to be an honor, man. Yeah, I'm actually looking at it now. It's like it's like a big painting or something like that.
Yeah, it's 5,000 square feet on the exact spot where the orders was read off.
What?
And a cool thing about it is, since it was a national monument, we couldn't sign it. So what we did, and they explained it in the CBS interview as well.
Is that it on the monitor behind me?
Yep, that's it. And now right above Granger in that middle circle, you'll see faces of the soldiers. The face the face right above General Granger, that's my face. We couldn't sign it, so we painted our faces on the soldiers.
Oh my God, that is so cool. Yeah, I'm gonna be getting my program is gonna feature a bigger monitor so people can see. This is a smaller monitor, but it's got a lot of good detail in it. That is pretty cool. I see go ahead.
Harriet Tubman, Esther
Wow.
who was the first person to hit the shores of Galveston. But in the end, what I'm saying is all people participated in that, and the abolitionists like John Brown and stuff, they were actually connected to the Republican Party, and I'm able to admit that. So why can't they admit that right now the Republican Party isn't what it used to be, because they fight against everything that was established by the Republican Party?
Man, Dantrell, there's nothing. I mean, I like the way you say it. I don't have any counterpoint to that at all, because that is a really good argument of why are you going against the original Republican principles of, like you said, of abolition and flying the flag of what would have been the enemy back then.
So yeah, that's it in a nutshell, man. I think it's all ignorance, and ignorance is bliss. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately. All right, Dantrell, let me move it on, man.
All right, now.
Always an honor. That's pretty cool. It sucks you couldn't sign it, but I like the fact that you got your whole damn face in it. That's good stuff.
Oh yeah, and low key, I'll probably get in trouble for this. I did, but it's hidden. Just so I can come back and show my grandkids.
I liked it. That's pretty cool. In Galveston, Texas, and all the way down there at the bottom. Wow. That's cool. All right, man. Have a good evening. Good talk. Wow. That's a hell of an accolade. Okay, looking in the comments. What is that? That's a very long name there. Make them speak health to power.
We are demanding reparations, and Biden created a piece of nothing. I don't acknowledge that Fed farce. Okay, make them. Couple questions. First of all, you're not going to get reparations, but in regards to Biden created a piece of nothing, what do you mean? What are people even suggesting that Biden created to begin with? You're saying he created a piece of nothing. And then you said, I don't acknowledge that Fed farce. Are you suggesting that Biden is a federal snitch or something? I would love to have you in the box and dissect what you're talking about. I can detect your anger and passion, but I don't know what direction you're going with in that. Looking in the comments here, 1-2 comment. Be nice there, Devin. All right, if this country was equal, there wouldn't have to have. Oh, if this country was equal, they wouldn't have to have these holidays for equality. Yeah, I agree with that. But in addition to having these holidays for equality, the fact that people protest the damn holidays shows how much we favor inequality. Even to this day, I mean, like, listen, when it comes to Martin Luther King, everybody now in 2022 believes that what Martin Luther King did was morally good for the country. Yet when Reagan implemented this holiday in the 1980s, there were people who were opposed to it. Why? Why would you be opposed to honoring somebody like that? So I don't get it. And willing to defend Confederate soldiers. Now, you can talk about being for rebellion or whatever you want to suggest that the Confederates were for, but I can't imagine you thinking it was more morally correct than Martin Luther King. And folks, the same folks who are for Confederate statues are against Martin Luther King's holiday, many of them at least. That's why that party gets branded that way, folks. That is why that party gets branded that way when you do things like that. We were demanding reparations, and he made Juneteenth a federal holiday. That's nothing. Listen, now I get what you're saying. You're more clear with it. You're saying that us African Americans were demanding reparations, and the only thing Joe Biden came through with was making Juneteenth a federal holiday. The issue with reparations is I don't think there's a lot of African Americans that are not even a fan of it. Now, I've suggested, and folks have asked me, how do I feel about reparations? I've suggested that if you were going to do something like that, there are 3 areas we were constantly held back in. You couldn't get an education, you couldn't purchase property, and there is another one. I believe it was you couldn't get involved in a lot of you couldn't become a doctor, a lot of businesses you had no access to. So I've said that if you're going to give reparations, you don't want to just give somebody a blank check so they can go out and buy some rims or a new pair of Jordans. You can do things that meet those criteria that would make people more valuable in terms of the country as a whole and returning back to society. First of all, education. Now, we do get some discounts in education, but how about as a form of reparations, free education? I mean, because an educated populace is better for the country. So since African Americans were denied access to universities and a decent education for most of America's history, by the way, I would say maybe in the form of a free education or, very, very low cost education. In addition to education, the home loans. We weren't able to own properties in a lot of neighborhoods. Some would argue that still may be the case. I would suggest in regards to that, home loans, or better yet, similar to the GI Bill. You go join the military, you can get a loan. It's similar to how the GI Bills are. Once again, purchasing property allows generational wealth and things that we didn't have access to that the white community had access to long before us. Folks always say, well, what about, the things that happened in the past? How do they currently affect us now? It doesn't have any effect on you. You weren't around. Well, there are families that still own farms and businesses that came about during those times. There are no black families that own businesses or houses that came along during those times because we couldn't. So if you're white and you have a farm in your family that's been in that family for 100 years, you're benefiting from that area. And any African American that lived any African American family that was around during that time that still have descendants now were kept from it. So there are plenty of people nowadays that benefit from that era. So that would be another area. Very similar to, like I said, the GI Bill. There's a third area which kind of, my mind wasn't prepared to go in this direction, but if you're going to do reparations, that's probably the best way I would say do it. Give people an education, allow people to purchase property, something of that nature. But this country has never had much tolerance to, hell, a large portion of the country didn't even want to admit what they did was wrong. Damn, be damn paying for it. So I don't know if it would ever happen. I just don't know about that. But the question comes up all the time, so I figured I'd answer it. I don't want a loan. I want them to buy me the property. Wicked Wise 13. How do you make modern day whites that may have not benefited from slavery at all pay for you a home when some of them can barely afford their own mortgage? I don't know if you can do it in a fair manner. That's the point I'm trying to make. You want reparations for what happened to us during slavery. I get it. It was wrong as hell. But you're getting it from people that may or may not, that had nothing to do with it. Appreciate those shades there. Thank you. I mean, there are a lot of white people that are struggling too. Hell, when you see people protesting for a $15 an hour minimum wage, there are plenty of white people in that line. There are plenty of white people out there protesting. How does it look to make them pay for you a home based on what happened to your great-great-great-grandparent? I mean, I just want to be fair about it. I'm not saying that America's original sin has been, accounted for. I agree with that. But at the end of the day, the people who were victimized are deceased. I don't know. I just can't see how you could do it from any fair standpoint. Every element of this country benefited from our enslavement. What did I say? From our enslavement, the government owes. Well, Matt John spoke. I hate to give the counter argument that it often comes up because I despise this argument. They talk about the Irish slaves and all that bullshit. I'm not about to give you a spiel on the Irish slaves because I wonder if there really was such a thing. But I will say this. Immigrants from other countries, non-black countries that came here voluntarily were exploited as well. And if we start using your argument in regards to every element of this country benefited from our enslavement, we're not going to be at the end of the day, at the end of that argument, blacks are not going to be the only people stepping up claiming that the country benefited from their exploitation in some form or another. I just can't imagine how we could, make the descendants of all of these people whole. I mean, keep in mind, if you got one slave, how big is that family tree at this point from that one female? She had children, her children had children, etc. You've seen Ancestry.com and all those sites. I mean, that one slave may now have 400 people showing up for reparations from the work of one person. How do you make that whole? I mean, what do you give them, like just a few pennies each? I mean, so this is the stuff that's going to come up. I just do not know the formula for how you can make this whole, other than some of the things I suggested. Allow you to be able to get a home, no interest or something like that. Oh, the other third one was going to be allow you to open up business. Whereas maybe you have no permit costs. You open up a business, you have to pay, you have to pay money for opening up a business. Just yearly certification fees, permits, and things like that. Maybe allow you to open up a business and not charge you any type of taxes for a while. Because once again, African Americans were not allowed to really have businesses in this country. Black Wall Street's a perfect example of what they did when we tried. But I don't know how you could do this without really, really angering a large portion of the country and hurting people that are completely innocent. I mean, since the slave trade, we've had a hell of a lot of blacks and whites migrate to America. Let's say you got a German family that migrated to America right after World War II. They're white. Should they have to pay reparations? Should their tax money be used for reparations? Their family had nothing to do with it. So, and it's the same thing, say you're a Somalian or a Nigerian that came to America or a Haitian that came to America in the 1980s or something like that. Should you receive reparations when you have no ancestry involved in this? It would be extremely difficult. I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that you just totally throw it out the window. I'm just simply saying I don't see how you could make it work. We know who owned slaves, Zappy Leg. No, you don't. A lot of them families destroyed their records. Our history is loaded with efforts to lie and conceal the atrocities of our past. I'm certain that every slave owner in this country is not known. I mean, not only with the family of the slave, if your granddad was a slave owner, you don't want people to know granddad was doing all that horrible shit. So not only would the family tear up the records, probably wouldn't be that hard to get City Hall or the government to do it either, because everybody was in on the cake. So I am certain that there are some of those folks that have just simply been lost through the L's of history. You're not going to know everybody that owned it. Biden tried to start a commission to study the issue. Republicans shot it down. Anytime, it's like the TikTok sound effect. Oh, no. Every time you bring up something that is done that African Americans seem to like, that is specifically tailored to African Americans, you do get Republicans. Oh, no. I don't know why that happens. I get folks on here all day, every day that will swear up and down that it's the Democratic Party that's intolerant. But yet, this type of shit happens over and over and over again, up to and including trying to roll back the Juneteenth holiday. Any Republican that hates being labeled a racist should be fighting tooth and nail to stop that shit. There is no gain to that at all. As a Republican voter, how are you helped at all by getting rid of Juneteenth? You get an extra day of work that you were going to get paid for. What is the benefit of rolling back Juneteenth other than pissing off a bunch of black people? Any Republican that does not like those labels should be fighting against that. Period. Anyhow, folks, listen, I do got to get up early as usual. I appreciate you guys rolling with me. You can be anywhere you want to on TikTok. And fortunately for this last couple hours, you've been rolling with your boy. As I always say, I do not ban, block, or censor. This was not the original comment we were going to talk about tonight, but it kind of spun off in that way. I'm looking at the comments real quick. Petite Elisa said, Democrats are tolerant until you deviate off their script. Perhaps, but at least they're appearing tolerant as opposed to rolling back Juneteenth. I mean, I would ask you, Pete, in the comments, do you think that's a good idea for Republicans in Georgia to roll back Juneteenth? Can you think of any Republican benefit for doing that? How does that benefit the Republican Party at all? We already know what the African American community is going to label them for doing it. Is there any net benefit at all to do that? Why would you do that? It just sounds ridiculous. Anyway, I got to go, folks. You know how it works. I got to get to work in the morning. Appreciate you guys rolling with me. Catch you tomorrow at 7. Handsome Liberal out.